You know I've traveled near and far, see the shining sea. I've seen a lot of places and people that were nice to me. One place that's in my heart, and this is how I feel. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. She's nestled in the sand hills on a river called Fayetteville. Special to so many who proudly served our country here. She was named for Lafayette and known for cotton mills. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. My hometown, Fayetteville. I'm so proud to be from here. It don't take long when you're away from home to find out how you feel. It's always good to come home to Fayetteville. Babe Ruth hit his first one, heard around the world. Sherman marched with the Union and burned the arsenal. Old Market House still standing, but stands for freedom's will. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. My hometown, Fayetteville. I'm so proud to be from here. It don't take long when you're away from home to find out how you feel. It's always good to come home to Fayetteville. My all-American city, Fayetteville. Talking about my hometown, Fayetteville.
And good evening. I'd like to call the January 27th, 2014 meeting to order and ask Dr. Bruce Martin from Village Baptist Church to lead us in the invocation.
May we stand, please? As we pray, we'll pray for Councilman Crisp today, that he will recover. Let's pray for our fair city. Almighty God, we come to you today with the business of the people upon our minds. And we turn our hearts to those great needs that you have laid upon the shoulders of these wise servants. Pray that you would bestow upon them your special wisdom for every challenge. That you would continue to bless this city that we love and the people that we love. We pray, Lord, that you will continue to prosper this great city, to keep it safe from all harm and the threat of evil. We pray, Lord, that in every decision, deliberation, it will be for the advancement so that future generations will one day look back and say, all we have today is because of what we did in these days. And so I pray your blessing upon them and upon this city, upon Councilman Crisp. Pray, Lord, that always that this city would turn its eyes to you for every need and every challenge. And we do that right now as we pray together. And Lord, some will pray in the name of Allah, some will pray in the name of Jehovah, but I will pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Council item 4.0 is the approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion. Mr. Hurst.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to approve the agenda, except moving item 9.04 to 6.04, the annual air quality report.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
And have a first and second. Council, please vote. That is unanimous of those present. And we don't have any recognitions tonight, even though there are a lot of great people doing some great things. We'll move to 6.0, and that's reports from the boards and commissions, and the Airport Commission is the first up.
Good evening. My name is Ralph Hamilton. I am the Airport Commission Chairman. Okay. I've got about 5 areas I want to discuss, and then I'll just stop and sit down. Okay. The first area is air service changes. Second is economic development. Third is administrative report. Statistics is the fourth, and looking forward is the fifth. Under the air service changes, United Airlines started service to Dulles, Washington, with 3 flights a day on the 14th of February, 2013. U.S. Airways flight to National changed from a 50-seat to a 37-seat turboprop aircraft on April 2013. And by the way, if you have any questions as I'm going along, you can stop me, and if I don't know the answer, Brad does. Okay. Under economic development, one of the things, there's about 6 items here. We extended the sublease for Sierra Nevada Corporation with Phoenix Globe support for a year. Okay. We completed $8.9 million of federal construction projects with local contracts, and we have a DBE with them with 9%. Okay. What that means is that we did the air carrier ramp, we did the taxiway extension, and we did the runway safety area. A lot of construction out there on the runways. We continued passenger facility charge program of $1.5 million in support of the airport matching share. What this means, if you don't know, is every time you get on an airplane, it costs you $4. And doesn't charge you anything to get off, but $4 to get on. Okay. We negotiated extensions for the airline leases, and we did that for 3 more years. We approved the amendments and lease for Landmark Aviation and All-American Aviation Service Flight School for 5 years. Okay. We approved the final 5-year agreement with the airport restaurant. That's P Inc. And that'll be the last one, and we'll have to go out for bids after that. Under administrative reports, we updated the airport minimum standards. They hadn't been updated since 1998. And so we brought into consideration TSA rather than the FAA security as an example. We adjusted the airport fee schedule, and we're talking here on rental cars, we're talking airline landing fees, we're talking gasoline fees for the use of the gas storage area out there. Under statistics, there were 485,053 passengers that landed and took off. Of those, 42% were personal, 34% were business, and 22% were military. We do have a USO out there. There were 39,029 people that visited the USO. Of that, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's behind the secure area, and it's for veterans. It's for active military, spouses, and dependents. And they provide just a wonderful service out there. Looking forward, we'll do the pre-design work to begin in 2014 for a $20 million FAA terminal improvement grant in the next 3 to 5 years. The Airport Commission administration will work with a rental car planning and development, rental car maintenance and storage facility. And what we're doing here is we are doing a contract facility charge. And for every time somebody rents a car, they're going to be charged for it, and they'll be charged for it, and we're going to use that maybe to build a building out there to improve the facilities out there for the rental cars. It's similar to PFCs, and like I say, we're going to pass it on to the renter. That's the airport for 2013, and I might say it was a good year. It was a real good year. Thank you for the opportunity for me to discuss this with you, and if you have any questions, now's the time.
Mr. Hamilton, we do have a couple of questions, but first I want, so many of the council members in here are newer. Can you give us a little bit of your background?
Well, I was in the Air Force for 27 years. I was a navigator. I was a flight planner. I was a chief of production on the A-10 for about a year. I was the assistant director of operations over at Hickam. That's in Hawaii. Nice assignment. Everybody should go over there. I was the airfield manager at Pope after I got back. And then after, in '88, when I retired, I went out to the airport and was the assistant manager out there. Did safety, security, operations, maintenance, did all the maintenance contracts, construction contracts out there. I was basically worried about making sure that they got completed like they were supposed to. And we did the FAA inspections, and in my time there, we started a little bit after, about 5 years after I got there, and we had 7 years worth of no discrepancies. Now, Tony Coleman picked it up, and he has 19 years total from when we started.
That's great. You retired from the Fayetteville Airport.
I did. I retired 2001. And,
Well, thank you for your service, Mr. Hamilton. Councilmember Arp's got a question.
Mr. Hamilton, thank you for your report. You mentioned that there was something that had been updated and hadn't been updated, and I didn't quite capture that.
Okay, that's the just a minute here. The updated the airport minimum standards. Okay, that's I guess the best way of saying that is one of the things that they did in the minimum standards back in '98 or prior to '98 is they had the FAA security, and that was part of it there. When TSA came about, they updated the standards to make sure TSA was the primary one rather than the FAA security. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then I want to follow up. You said 485,053 passengers
That's
arrived
true.
and departed. That's almost 500,000 in a year.
That's true.
And 42% were personal travelers,
42% were personal
34 business,
business,
and then 22 military.
22% were military.
That's a good indicator of a healthy economy when you have good travel like that in your airport. And then the upgrades for the terminal will be sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, and that's a
Yes.
grant, a $20 million grant.
Well, hopefully, we're looking at the FAA is going to give us the money. And I think it's going to happen, because, we have the PFCs that we're throwing in there and money from the state and also the FAA. So, that's a goodly amount, but, the terminal needs to be upgraded like everything else.
It does, and we look forward to seeing your plan in the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Wright has a question.
Yes. There's a couple of questions combined in one. There were 2 additional charges, and can you explain to me the $4 charge for getting on the plane?
That's been around, that's a charge, a PFC charge.
We just didn't know.
Okay, and that's a passenger facility charge. And it's been around for, I guess 15 years, maybe longer than that.
That money comes back to the airport?
That money will come back to the airport, and we'll use that money to build things that's approved by the FAA.
All right, thank you. The next one is, there's a charge that you're charging customers that rent cars at the facility.
We haven't started that yet.
Okay, what would be the charge? The amount?
We haven't determined that yet. But, the thought process is that the rental cars, what they would like to do is walk out to an enclosed area that's covered, get their car there, and go away. Now, I guess the best way to say this is it's a fixed charge. The rental cars are going to charge them, and like I say, we haven't negotiated this yet.
Okay.
And then, after 10 days, they won't charge them anymore per day. But it's just a pass-through. That's all it is.
Okay, and you said that money will be used to help build a facility for the rental car agencies to have a better
That's
facility?
true. That's the thought process right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Colvin.
How you doing, sir? Just a couple questions. I know that you said you had some renovation plans in store. One of the things mentioned in the Garner report was that the terminal needed upgrading. A suggestion was the terminal needed upgrading and Wi-Fi added. And so I've heard your tentative plans on the upgrade for the terminal renovations. How about for the Wi-Fi? Do you have?
There is a Wi-Fi out there right now.
Okay, fantastic. And the second thing I was asking, how are we doing in terms of capturing some of that airport traffic that currently goes to Raleigh? We're doing pretty good with that?
Well, it takes an hour to get up there. They have more flights that go to various places. So if we haven't got a flight, then people will go up there. Now, how are we doing on capturing that? Can't really say, because there aren't many statistics that the airlines are willing to put out.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hamilton, I don't know if there was something maybe a little wrong with your numbers, or maybe it's my thinking. You said that there were 485,000 passengers. What period of time was that?
That's last year. 485,000 enplanements and deplanements. That's getting on the airplane, that's getting off the airplane.
Yeah, that's working hard with my mind, because
It's
if you do the math on that, that equates out to about 1,300, a little better than 1,300 passengers a day.
Well, there's
365 days.
I can only tell you that there's about 200 last year. Was
I mean,
about
it would be great.
240,000 that got on, and about that number that got off.
Okay.
Now, I don't know about how many per day. I haven't got a clue. I've just got the numbers here of what the enplanements and deplanements were.
Yeah.
And if you say it's 1,300 a day, well, so be it.
That's just simple math. I mean, second thing, and is I don't have a hard copy of that report. Do we get a hard copy? I mean, I looked through your stuff today trying to find one.
I didn't make a copy of this. These are just notes that were pulled out of the Airport Commission notes that I have. Okay, you'll probably never see a copy.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
If I beg for one, I won't get it.
You may see a broad copy, but you won't see the notes that go with it. And I think you have Brad.
I can get that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you for coming back to visit us.
Okay. You guys have a nice night, and I'm going to depart to fix. That's politalk.
All right. We have a representative from the Board of Adjustments with us. Mr. Jenkins, before you start, give us a little background of yourself, please.
Well, my name is Bill Jenkins. I'm born and raised in Fayetteville. I own a business here in Fayetteville for over 30 years. I have been proud to serve Fayetteville on a couple of the boards and commissions over the last 10 years, and I'm looking forward to giving you the report this evening. I do serve currently as chairperson of the Fayetteville City Board of Adjustments for this year. Those of you that may be a little less familiar with this board, I'm going to break this report down into 3 segments. Give you a little background of what we are, what we do, some highlights from this past year, as well as some observations from the board from what we've seen has transpired. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body responsible for hearing and deciding appeals, variance requests, and interpretations of the zoning regulations. The variances provide relief of standards when evidence of hardships prevent compliance. The board must adhere to all the existing regulations and can only recommend changes to the ordinance where an update or revision may be needed. The board is composed of 5 regular members. We serve 3-year terms, and they are staggered terms. The meetings are held 3rd Monday of each month in this room in council chambers. The applications are reviewed by staff for completeness, with staff making recommendations based upon required findings. Public notice is given and the public hearing is set for the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment makes the final decision to approve or deny variances or appeals. These requests do not go before City Council. The board is autonomous. Appeals of the Board of Adjustment decision must be filed with Superior Court of Cumberland County, and it must be done so within 30 days of receipt of notification. Some highlights from this past year. Last year we heard 4 variance cases. This was a 60% decrease from the previous year and an 81% decrease from 2011. This is in direct correlation to the Unified Development Ordinance taking effect August of 2011. Also this past year, we had quasi-judicial training from the UNC School of Government and also a legislative and legal update training session. Some of the observations that we've experienced or we'd like to share with you. In the most recent 10-year history, the Board of Adjustment has gone from a high of 58 cases to a total of 4 in the most recent year. This steady decline can be seen from adoption of the current ordinance to the most recent year. Based on the information retrieved from the databases and staff research, the reduction in requests to vary from the ordinance is a direct reflection of the current code and the amount of flexibility it allows. Within the new code, there is room for many alternative plan options, administrative adjustments, and other scenarios. This added value allows citizens and developers alike a more streamlined approach to project completion than the additional time required to process cases through the board. In addition, I would also like to add that it has been a pleasure working with city staff out of the planning department. They are very professional.
They pay you to say that?
Did not pay me a dime to say that, but they are very professional. They are well prepared, and they make our jobs much easier serving on this board. I'll answer any questions if there are any at this time.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem Davey has a question.
Thank you. In your report, you talked about some challenges, as you kind of discussed a little bit. Are you inclining there, you would like to possibly see some revision to the ordinance, or you just feel like, what would you suggest would be a good help for your board with the challenges you're facing?
Well, I think the ordinance, the Unified Development Ordinance is working well now. I think staff is doing a very good job working with applicants, working out scenarios that might work to get their process to us much easier, their acceptance rate better. I understand that they are working on a new sign ordinance. That is in the works now, and that would be a help with us in the future. I think the current sign ordinance is outdated, so I think that would be a big plus. The only other challenge I see is, again, the number of cases that we have has fallen off dramatically, which, again, I think is a good sign, because, again, I think the city is working with these applicants, and it's making the process much easier than it has been. Any questions?
Councilmember Wright.
I just want to know, when you say variances, what are some of the type of variances that you've had in the past that have declined substantially after you tweaked the UDO?
The variances we deal with are basically sign variances. We also deal with variances when it comes to folks who may want to modify their residences or new construction. I think more so what we've seen has been more so with development and again, property owners trying to remodel or add to their homes, especially in some of these older neighborhoods where some of the plots are a little bit more difficult to work with. So I think the biggest decline we've seen has been more so in the property owners. The city is working well with them, I think, to assist them with their needs and whatever they're trying to do with their particular property.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from council?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to see you. And the next report is from the Joint Appearance Commission. Hello and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Johnny Lanthorn, and I'm the current chairman of the Joint Appearance Commission. And on behalf of the commission, I would like to say I appreciate the recent efforts to engage with the city's boards as well. I want to just submit this annual report. I hope y'all have a copy of it. I believe y'all do. I just would briefly touch the purpose of the Joint Appearance Commission is to promote the enhancement and appearance of the community. And we pursue this purpose by reviewing the appearance of public buildings. Cell phone towers is a good one. Recommending ordinances, directing local officials toward the needed enforcement actions, and by sponsoring programs such as Community Appearance Awards program. The membership is made up by members appointed by Cumberland County and the 9 towns within the county. And the city of Fayetteville appoints 4 members. The Board of Commissioners appoints 4 members, and the governing boards with the 8 other towns, which is 9, appoints a member each, and I happen to be from the town of Wade. Everyone is participating except for the town of Falcon at this time. We also, within our commission, we have the tree board. And I have 4 members set up there. Jerome Bell is the chairman of that subcommittee. Kevin Height, Ashley Culleton, and William Jennings also do. And their job is to promote public tree protection measures within the city and helps the city maintain designation of the Tree City USA. The meetings and the staff support is with David Nash and Matt Rooney from the county, and they do a great job with us. A few activities that we've done in 2013, we sponsored our 5th annual community awards, and there is a chart, hopefully it's in y'all's package as well, of how this has progressed over the years. We've been partnering with the Botanical Garden holding an Arbor Day ceremony in which it helps us to retain the Tree City USA designation. And we're in the process as well of participating in joint meetings with some other boards and commissions. And one of the things is the gateways. And we've met with Mr. Colvin and Mr. Katie and Davey recently on that. We want to preserve the UDO and promotion of the Tree City. We want to keep that going really strong. And we continue to expand the Community Awards program as well. We would like to remind that we are a joint board, and whatever we can do, we also touch the whole county, not just the city. And we just have to get that information out to everyone else. That's about it, and if anyone has any questions, I will be glad to try to answer them.
Do you have the numbers of the committee members, how they're broken out among the...
Yes, sir. Fayetteville, like I said, has 4 of them. There's the county places 4. Then each of the 9 municipalities places 1 person, with the exception of Falcon. And for whatever reason, they're not joining us. I think that's because they're right there on the edge of the county line.
Thank you. I just wanted to make that public knowledge. Council, any questions? Wow, what a great job. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Council will move to 6.04, which is really the 9.04 we moved up for air quality. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good evening. Give me just 1 second. Let me open this up real quick. Well, good evening. My name is Kelly Blanford-Baugh. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable Sandhills. And just to give you a very brief history of Sustainable Sandhills, we've been working in the Sandhills region for the last 10 years, so we're excited that in 2014 we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary working to reduce energy and make this a better environment. Today I'm here in one of our capacities. We facilitate our air quality work across Cumberland County, and I'm here with the folks from FAMPO, the Fayetteville Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, to talk about our Ozone Advanced Action Program. Now, this is a county-wide initiative, and it really is the way forward for the community in terms of our air quality. Now, ground-level ozone, it forms when NOx and VOCs combine with ultraviolet light to create ozone. It's a very hazardous chemical. It can create asthma and create other problems for the environment. And one of the biggest factors is transportation. that's the largest one and one of the areas in which we focus on. This program is a national program that the EPA announced more than a year ago, and we are the only county in North Carolina that's working in this program. So we're excited for that, and the EPA is really excited to work with us. It's a collaborative effort between us, the states, tribes, and the EPA to help us meet the National Ambient Air Quality Standard around ozone. It's really a way for us to take proactive steps to prevent our ozone levels from getting out of hand and to ensure that we remain in attainment. We want our continued health protection. We want to make sure that we can maintain this level of attainment, and we want to make sure that we devote resources to continue to be in attainment. Participation is voluntary, so we have a wonderful group of air quality stakeholders that are appointed by the Cumberland County Commissioners, and we have an excellent group that gets together to put together a plan forward. Now, we submitted our intention to participate in September 2013, and then on an annual basis, we will renew the letter and the strategies that we submit to the EPA. So we have a July deadline in terms of getting new strategies moving forward. Now, participation in the program does not ensure that we will meet our attainment values in 2016, but some of those numbers are actually up for discussion at the current time. Now, we can't just talk about our Ozone Advanced program without taking one quick look back at the Early Action Compact Plan that started in 2002. I'm sure many in this room participated and knew about this program, and it was really the starting point for this community to come together around air quality, and initiated the air quality stakeholders group and helped us reach our attainment levels. This is a list so you all can see. We've got public, private sector. We have all of the jurisdictions in Cumberland County. One change is that we have Councilwoman Jensen now on our Air Quality Stakeholders Committee. Our trends moving forward are wonderful. We are excited. When we went to North Carolina DENR and asked them to give us some projections that we can share and include in our report. And we are definitely on a downward trend in terms of the ozone levels. You can see that from 2007 to 2010, our on-road emission levels reduced, but they're projected in 2018 to be more than half. So we're excited that a lot of the efforts that are taking place around Cumberland County and the city of Fayetteville are having a positive effect on these numbers. This path forward is a list of local strategies, and there are 4 different areas: awareness, energy reduction, transportation, and land use. And without going into detail regarding all of them, we'll talk a little bit about some of the awareness campaigns. PwC does a great job with their tree power program, sharing that information in and around with the customers. With FAMPO, Sustainable Sandhills puts together an air quality poster contest, which is actually in action at this very moment. We've invited all public, private, Fort Bragg schools to participate. We have kindergarten through 5th graders create posters, which we then award with the help of the air quality stakeholders, and then turn into a calendar, which I believe council received. The city and FAST promote bus ridership as an ongoing program. In terms of energy reduction, the city of Fayetteville has a focus on building efficiency and upgrading lighting. FSU has a LEED Silver standard. They're recommissioning, they have an ongoing recommissioning bus program, and they're working on some solar programs. Fort Bragg has thermal energy storage. They purchase only Energy Star equipment, and they have a Green Boot program, which is similar to a Green Business program, and they have LEED certified buildings. Sustainable Sandhills, we have been promoting our green business program, but most excitingly, we have an ongoing green schools program where we work with Cumberland County Schools. In 2012, we worked with Cumberland County Schools to reduce their energy footprint. When we convert it to dollars, we saved them $700,000 in 2012. We're looking forward to 2013 and having just that amount of savings, and more so in the years ahead. In terms of transportation, PwC works on reducing idling time, that therefore reducing NOx emissions, having hybrid bucket trucks and lower emissions diesel engines prevents some of the NOx emissions as well. City of Fayetteville has an idle reduction policy, and one of the more quantifiable pieces is that we can say that 14 to 17% of fuel consumed would be reduced by that percentage. Actually, at Fayetteville State, there's a 3% reduction in transportation over the next few years, meaning that greenhouse gas reduction would be that of 36 tons annually, or 500 tons by 2025. They've got a low-emission parking campaign, so those with low-emission vehicles can park a little closer to the door, which is a good reason to buy a smart car. And then for land use, for many of the jurisdictions, there's density development ordinance, which put aside numbers. 60% of the acreage can be developed, and 40% of open space would be mandated for interconnectivity for those areas. For the town of Eastover, they have a zero lot line development conditional use permit to help protect sensitive environmental areas. And then creation of Greenscape Review Board for construction projects at Fort Bragg. They use the Tree City USA board to review landscape designs and make sure that there's less tree loss during construction projects. And then the enforcement of adopted and revised United Development Ordinance requiring open space dedication, parkland dedication, tree preservation ordinance to reduce the heat island effect for the city of Fayetteville. Now, these were all submissions that came to us voluntarily through our partner organizations with the air quality stakeholders, and it's really a path forward. We'll be getting updates from all of the participating organizations and individuals and submitting them annually. One of the ways that we will move forward is we want to quantify this data a little bit more so we can continue to show the reduction in greenhouse gases and NOx and VOCs. Again, we've got our poster contest, which is an exciting time for us, and we're always looking for other judges to help us sort through the beautiful artwork that we get from the elementary students in Cumberland County. And the only other piece is that we do have an air quality stakeholders meeting in April, on April 10th. It's at the historic courthouse, and we would invite you all to attend. It's open to the public.
Thank you, Ms. Baha.
You're welcome.
Have a couple of questions. Councilmember Moan.
Thank you, Ms. Blanford. You had mentioned the potential of reaching non-attainment designation, and are there some financial penalties that come with that from the federal government?
There can be for businesses as they move into the area. It could be a reason for a business perhaps to not move into an area with additional information and testing that they would have to do. When we stay in attainment, we're a little bit more free to interest and invite businesses to come and join us. With having the attainment status, we also are able to get additional funds from the federal government to support some of the work that we're doing, especially things around air quality that help ensure that our ozone levels continue to reduce.
And that's a follow-on question. We used to have a monitoring station right along I-95, collecting all that good emissions, which is passing through our state, through our county. What makes it look like, we're responsible, but really the federal government put I-95 in there And so how is that one station slanting our results?
We actually have two, and that is
Along
that
95?
Actually, the other one is in Hope Mills.
Okay.
And so for the county, they take the numbers between those two stations and do an average. Now, it is considered that there is a major interstate that runs right along there, but it is one of those things that we do have to consider in terms of the traffic. So when we do see traffic rise, and there are days where the numbers are higher at a particular station, but they take an average and take it through and look at the average throughout the year to determine whether or not we're meeting the right numbers.
And we have no ability to have those two stations moved a little further away from 95?
That's a great idea. I'll ask next time.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Moan had pretty much asked my question when I served as liaison back in the early days. That was a concern of ours, is why I appreciate the Sustainable Sandhills building all the partnerships throughout the county, because without attainment, that would really affect our economic development potential here in Fayetteville, Cumberland County. So that's critical that we remain in attainment. So thank you for your work, Ms. Ball.
Councilmember Art.
Hey, Kelly, thank you for your report tonight. I'm just curious, two questions. One, out of 100 counties, only the county of Cumberland is a participant. Why is that so?
You know, we've got a great group of people here in Cumberland County, and the folks in Fayetteville, the city, the county, all of the jurisdictions, along with the folks from Fort Bragg, decided that the environment is important and that we need to pay attention to what's going into our air, if not for the sake of the environment, for the sake of the children and their health and the elderly and the families that we want to invite here and we want them to stay. We're proactive, and you know, Sustainable Sandhills has a 10-year history of working on environmental concerns, and so does Fort Bragg, and it goes back even further than that. We're still concerned. It's not something that goes away because we decided that we're switching our lights off. So.
Well, thank you. I just was curious why we're the only county. My second question is, you showed a graph that showed a downward trend, and you said by FY18 that we will have reduced our emissions by half. What do you attribute that to?
A lot of it is due to the fact that we have emissions reductions programs across the county. Vehicles are becoming more efficient, and we have to make sure that they're not pumping NOx and VOCs out into the environment.
Okay, but what specifically are we doing? I mean, the federal government forces vehicle emissions. That's part of their rollout. What are we doing to make an impact?
Well, a lot of the items, the strategies that I had presented, and you actually have the entire Ozone Advance Action Plan that details more than 50 strategies to reduce those numbers.
Okay, but I'm like our buses, are there things specific to the city?
Yeah, using lower emissions diesel buses for one. PwC has hybrid trucks. You know, all of these pieces.
The blue toad idling and all that stuff.
Exactly. All of those things, they add up to reduce numbers for us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Wright.
Yes, thank you, Kelly, for the work that you guys are doing in the community. My question is, do you guys monitor only air, or do you monitor, warehouses, sewages that goes into the waters? And I heard you mention about other items, but you didn't say what. What else do you monitor besides just air quality?
Well, actually, we don't monitor the air quality. We go to the North Carolina Department of Natural Resources Division of Air Quality to get those numbers. They're the ones that actually monitor the air quality numbers. For Sustainable Sandhills, we're a community partner that brings people together to work on some of these initiatives. So we aren't actually monitoring things, we're facilitating a group discussion and planning of a way forward to make sure we reduce those numbers and make sure people understand what it is that we're trying to do.
So what do you do with that information? Do you bring it to the public? Do you try to bring other organizations into what you're doing to make it more expandable?
We do, and we share the information. Since we have the reach that we do within Cumberland County Schools, we want to ensure that all of the students go away understanding the importance of air quality. We invite the public to the air quality stakeholders meeting, and we have information sessions as an organization on a quarterly basis where people can come in and discuss those issues.
How do you get your information out to the public so they'll know about these meetings and things of that nature?
We send it out to the air quality stakeholders, which is represented by most of the entities within Cumberland County. We send it out via the media, and we use social media as well as some other means to get information out to the public.
Okay. I see you have your information for questions, your number, and your email and website on there as well. So if anybody wants to get information, maybe want to be a volunteer to help you guys do what you're doing, that information is available.
You're right, and our website is sustainablesandhills.org, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Colvin.
How you doing, Kelly? Thanks for your presentation. Just, I was wondering, as I was reviewing your strategy, so for sure, as we increase the usage to public transportation, that helps with the emission in opposed to individual cars. And what did you say about FAMPO? Are you all actively engaged with FAMPO, or do you have any representation on FAMPO?
Well, we work with them. We have a memorandum of understanding with FAMPO to facilitate the air quality work in Cumberland County.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, council will move to 7.0, which is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve or to pull.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item 7.06 for a vote separate from the entire consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
And 705 as well.
705 and 706. Any others? Okay, we'll move to 7.05. Mayor Pro Tem Davey.
Just wanted a brief presentation from Ted, just letting the general public know about the changes for the public forum times.
I think Mr.
Mayor, I apologize. Typically, you would vote to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7.05.
With the exception of 7.05 and 7.06. I am sorry for that. Council, if I could have your vote with those two exceptions. Madam Clerk, that is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, keeping me straight.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Regarding item 705, this item was introduced by Councilmember Moen at a work session, with the suggestion being that citizens who sign up to speak at the public forum be given 3 minutes to address council rather than the existing 2 minutes. There will be no changes to the target limit of 15 minutes total, with the mayor's discretion to extend to 30. So this is simply a change from 2 minutes to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Moen. Any other questions, City Manager? All right, council will vote on 7.05. Madam Clerk, that's unanimous. And Mr. Voorhees, since you're here.
So you needed somebody to make the motion and second.
Well, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation of 7.05.
Second.
Okay, council. Unanimous. And Mr. Voorhees, 7.06.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. This item is really just here for ratification of a prior council action. At the last council meeting on January 13th, the City Council took up the issue of Council Policy 105.2 concerning assessments. And after discussion, a motion was made to modify the rate of assessments, the interest rate of assessments, outstanding balances from the 8% rate to a rate that was attached or floating associated with a prime rate, a prime plus 2. Motion passed. There were some technical details of that motion that weren't verbalized, and so this is really just here to ratify that action with the specific language, and that is why it's here before you. So it's confirming the language of a prior council action.
Thank you, Mr. Voorhees. Mr. McDougal, you had a question?
Not a question, Mr. Mayor. I move that we adopt item number 7.06, Council Policy 105.2 of the assessment.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
I have a first and second. Any discussion? Okay, Council, I'll ask for your vote. Madam Clerk, that passes with Mr. Wright, Mr. Colvin, and Mr. Moan voting against.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Voorhees. We will move into the public hearings. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, sir, just one.
Okay, great.
Yeah, since both of our first, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Since both of these public hearings are special use permits, if we could go ahead and I believe we have the same speakers for both, if we could get all of them at the front, and we'll go ahead and swear everyone in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Do you want me to read my spill now, or do you want to do your thing now?
Go right ahead while I'm getting the presentation ready.
Great. Individuals wishing to speak at the public hearing should have signed up with the city clerk prior to the start of the meeting. 15 minutes will be allowed for each side of the issue being discussed. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes unless your group wishes to appoint just one speaker. Time used in response to a question from a council member will not be counted against you. Discussion following the public hearing will be limited to this body only unless someone from this chair is recognized to respond to a question. So when your name is called by the city clerk, we ask that you come to the podium, clearly state your name and home address for the record. Then you will see the light located on the podium change from green to yellow. You will have 30 seconds left to speak. When you see the red light come on, your time has expired. And again, due to policy restrictions, we are unable to extend the time given.
And let me make one clarification to that, Mr. Mayor. With these being special use permits, there are no time limits for these two cases.
Thank you very much.
As we get started, this is again a special use permit request. It's for a communications tower. This tower would be 175 feet tall. It'd be at the end of Johnson Road at 1715 Johnson. Our land use plan, you'll see in a moment, calls for conservation, and the 2030 growth plan calls for advanced planning basically for our infrastructure facilities here in the city. I did want to very quickly clear up a little question that came up at the agenda briefing on Wednesday as to which district this is in, and from the map you can see why there was a little bit of confusion. The site actually is in District 4, which is in your CAM, but part of the site is in District 3 as well, part of the property, but the actual cell tower site is in District 4, so it's right on the border. Again, this property is located right at the end of Johnson Street. Here in the very bottom left-hand corner, you can see where Johnson comes into Bragg Boulevard. Johnson Street ends down in this area, and then the cell tower will be right in this area of the property. As you can see from the aerial, most of the property around it is undeveloped. A lot of it is owned by City of Fayetteville PWC property. We do have a neighborhood here to the south. A lot of the houses that are, a couple of the houses that are right here adjoining that are actually owned by the same property owner that is requesting this action. Currently, low-density residential on this property and the ones to the south, and then again, a lot of undeveloped property around it. Land use plan, as I mentioned a while ago, does call for conservation in this particular area. I don't think that staff doesn't feel that a single cell tower really goes against that part of the land use plan as well. This is just a little sketch of the site as it will set. There's a existing abandoned house on the property. Johnson Street again, right in this area. The pavement ends here, and then there's a gravel road that comes into the property, and then this would go over to the cell tower site. As most of our cell tower sites, this will be a lease area of 100 by 100 feet. With all of their equipment inside of that. Just a quick picture of the property. The cell tower would be located here on the left-hand side of your screen, if approved. There are several standards that have to be met for cell towers to be built in the city of Fayetteville. And those are listed as this A through P list that you see in front of you. In your packet, there is an attachment labeled Summary of Compliance with Ordinance Requirements. That is from the applicant, and that will direct you as to how exactly they're able to meet all of these standards. Of course, they will be providing testimony as to how they will do this as well here momentarily. We do recommend just one condition of approval from staff and the Zoning Commission, that being the attached site plan with final approval, review and approval by the TRC. The city's Zoning Commission and staff have recommended approval. That based on the tower is located in a mostly undeveloped area of the city. Proposal meets all the applicable standards of the city and that condition that's listed above. And then just as a reminder, you do have 8 findings of fact if you look to approve this that has to meet as well. Are there any questions of staff before you open your public hearing?
Thank you. We will open the public hearing.
So we have Mr. Tom Johnson.
Thank you very much. I am Tom Johnson. I'm here representing the applicant, American Towers, LLC. My address is 4141 Park Lake Avenue, Suite 200 in Raleigh, North Carolina, 27612. I won't take any longer than I need to adequately address your questions and concerns. Certainly, I know there's no time limits, but I'm certainly not going to take advantage of that. I have with me here tonight the property owner, Mr. Barkley. He's here, and I also have Joe Smathers with me, who's a real estate expert who's here to testify or to answer any questions you may have regarding the impact study report that's already in the record. I do ask that the application and all associated documents that have already been submitted that are before you be admitted into evidence in support of our special use permit. I have a couple of things that I do want to submit that we've received subsequent to our submission. One is the FAA did get back a determination of no hazard to air navigation, so we do have that certification here. And then I'm also going to pass out Mr. Smathers' qualifications and an authorization letter. Mr. Smathers actually did not prepare the actual report. Mr. Herring did, but he has to appear at another hearing tonight, so Mr. Smathers is here to testify and has reviewed the report and the sites and can adequately address any questions that there may be with respect to that report. So if I may, I'll hand these to the clerk. I know I've been before this board before, but you have some new members, so I will do a little bit of an overview about why I may be here. You would think, well, we've got plenty of cell towers, why would we need any more? The trends in the wireless industry is what is driving this. Number one, at a pretty strong rate, folks are dropping their landline phones to rely on their wireless phone. Or if they have a landline phone, the first thing they pick up, it's in their pocket, they'll pick it up, is their wireless device. As a result, we need to make sure we have good, strong signal, not only outside, but in building. That becomes more crucial, especially if someone needs to pick up the phone to get 911 in the event of an emergency. So you have a good, strong signal to do that. Statewide, the average, or even nationwide, the average percentage of calls to 911 is 70% from wireless phones. So that's why it's become more important. But the second thing is data. Apps. Wireless data for those who telecommute, those who may work from home, but their office is elsewhere. There's a huge reliance on the network for data. And as a result of the data demand, you need a stronger signal and you need more bandwidth. I mean, you need more signal. That's where Fayetteville is a lot of this has to do with that need to meet the data needs of the community. And that's why we're here. I'm here on this tower is for AT&T. It will be built for other carriers in the future. American Tower, my primary client, builds these towers for the industry. And so that's what I'm here for. That's why we're here with this request tonight. And I'll show you a little bit of background on that. I've got a presentation here. This is the site. It's next to Cornbow Lake. It is at the end of Johnson Street. It's a very isolated area. Why do we need it? This particular site, if you will see, is right here in the middle. It's denoted 141-234. That's where the proposed tower is. This is the current coverage in the area. Your goal is to have the green. That's the coverage you want in the area. In this area, as you can see right now, we don't have that. Basically, green is in-building commercial or heavier building coverage. The blue is in-building residential. The magenta is outside coverage. It's in your car. And then if there's any white space, and on this one there's really not, because really the goal of this tower is to get stronger signal, to have good data coverage and good strong in-building coverage. As you can see, when this site is on, and you can see that from right here, 141-234, right here, you can see you've got the greens and the blues, which is your desired coverage in the area. Mr. Harmon showed you this earlier. This is actually the site. It's behind an existing house. It's at the end of Johnson Street. And this is an enlarged site plan, and it shows the dotted line, or the dotted lines are for future carriers. That is, 2 future carriers could put their equipment in an equipment shelter on the property. The one right here is the proposed equipment shelter for AT&T and for their services. This will be what's called a unipole. And when I say unipole, there are a lot of these around Fayetteville. We've done this because your ordinance encourages use of what we call stealth. That is to help hide the tower. The antennas are encapsulated within the pole so they don't stick out. That's what we're doing here. It's a 175-foot unipole with the antennas enclosed. Now that does limit the utility somewhat, because basically AT&T will tell you they need 2 vertical spaces on this type of tower versus a regular monopole tower with the antennas hanging out. But again, because of the ordinance and because this is, there are adjoining residential areas, we are being sensitive to that and putting this together. The shelter will be constructed to look like a residence since it is a residential area. It will have a wood fence around the compound to help it blend in with the area. Plus, there's a landscape buffer that your ordinance requires that certainly will comply with. This is an aerial of the site. This gives you a good idea. This is actually a grape vineyard right here. Some of that will be taken up by the compound, but it's going to go in this basic area right here. And that was determined in conjunction with the property owner. But this gives you a better idea of just how undeveloped this area is and how we tried to get it away from any development. It is a very small footprint, so even though this is a conservation area, it actually makes sense when you've got a conservation area next to a residential area to do this, because the footprint is just so small, but yet it will give the coverage to the residents that they need. I have Mr. Smathers here. He can come up and make a presentation, or you can just ask any questions you may have. Basically, the report that's submitted said there would be no adverse impact on adjoining property values. Again, that was based upon an analysis based upon our experience in the industry and the experience of both Mr. Herring and Mr. Smathers in that regard. We have FCC certifications in the record that show that there won't be any adverse impacts. We have to comply with, our AT&T does, with the FCC rules, and therefore any signal or radio frequency emissions from the tower is governed by the federal rules. Which basically it's deemed safe because we comply with the federal rules. Therefore, this body doesn't really consider that, but I did want to mention that so that you're aware of it. The height is within the height limits of your ordinance. Aesthetics, again, we're doing the unipole. And I'm just going through the list. Lighting, it will not have to be lighted. We've gotten the approval from the FAA. It will not have to be lighted at 175 feet. Basically, the point at which it has to be lighted is approximately 199 feet. That's not always the case, but generally the case. We meet the setbacks requirements. There's no tower that would nearby that would violate the separation requirement under your ordinance. This tower will be available for co-location in the future, and we did, and there's documentation in the record that AT&T examined other opportunities in the area with which to locate their antennas, and there were none in this area. As I said, the buffer and screening will be there in compliance with your ordinance. We will have the security fence around it. The FCC compliance assessment indicates there will not be any interference with any other operations in the area. The building will not be used. It's just an equipment shelter. Basically, there's computer equipment in the building to operate the facility. And that's all that's in that structure that's there. And it's approximately 11 and a half by 12. It's a standard structure that AT&T is currently using. There will not be any outdoor storage at the facility. That's not what this is for. This is solely for the operation of the equipment related to the tower. We will comply with all state and federal laws and regulations. And this is not a replacement of an existing tower, so therefore N is not applicable. It's not a non-conforming tower. This is a new tower, so O is not applicable. And we are aware that if for 6 consecutive months this tower is not used, it's subject to a request by the city to remove it, and we do understand and recognize that. I and Mr. Smathers are both available to answer any questions you may have. And feel free to answer, because I do want to have the opportunity and freely answer any questions that the council may have.
Are there any other speakers?
No, sir.
We'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Colvin.
Yeah, just wanted a little clarity.
Yes, sir.
Being that's embedded inside of a residential area, so were you saying that the federal government standards tracks the emissions to make sure it poses no threats? Or
Absolutely, and AT&T's is a certification that's enclosed in the record that we submitted. Their operations at this facility is a fraction of 1% of the maximum permitted exposure under the federal rules. So it's very, very, very small.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Mr. McDougall.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend approval of this special use permit for a communication tower on property zoned SF10. Single-family residential located at 1715 Johnson Street, and being the property of Herbert M. Blakely, with the conditions as set forth by the staff.
I second.
In meeting all 8 criteria.
Yes.
Thank you. Council, any discussion on the motion? No, I'll ask for your vote. Madam Clerk, that is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Harmon.
The next case we have before you, we'll see is very similar to the one that we just concluded. This requested action is for a special use permit of another communications tower. This one 125 feet in height, and it would be located at 3204 Jupiter Drive. It is within, on our land use plan, it's within an activity node. It's near what will become the interchange of I-295 and Bragg Boulevard. And again, part of the 2030 growth management plan, this does meet for advanced planning of infrastructure facilities and things of that nature. Where we're looking at, again, this property is right at the border of Fort Bragg. This is the actual property in question. The tower would be somewhere in this general area. We've got Bragg Boulevard here. This is all part of the military business park in this area. Currently, we do have commercial and industrial activity there in the business park. This particular part of it hasn't been developed yet. This will be the first thing in that area. And again, on our land use plan, it does show this is an activity node, so all of that fits into place. Again, this is the proposed site for the tower. Again, Bragg Boulevard here, and 295 right-of-way here just to the north. This is an imposed photo of this particular site. We are, staff and zoning commission are requesting a condition that a flag be mounted onto this particular pole, since it is so close to the 295 and has such high visibility there. You'll notice the transmission lines for the electric transmission lines here. Those are a little over 100 feet tall. This tower is about 125 feet, so those will all be kind of in the same neighborhood range in height. Just another photo, basically, of that area. Again, as on our last case, there is a summary of compliance with the ordinance requirements that the applicant has put together and is part of your packet. Those outline the A through P standards for freestanding towers here in the city of Fayetteville. And the zoning commission and staff have recommended a couple of conditions for this one. One, that it be a monopole tower with a flag, that there be perpetual maintenance of a U.S. flag to include replacement or repair for the life of the tower, and then again the attached site plan with final review and approval by the technical review committee. The zoning commission and staff both recommend approval. That based on the tower is located in an industrial area and would be adjacent to I-295. Proposal meets all standards of the city. The tower will be disguised as a flag and pole to minimize the visual impacts, and then those conditions again 1 through 3 that are listed above. Are there any questions of staff before you open your public hearing?
Councilmember Hurst.
Just a quick one, Mr. Harmon.
Yes, sir.
The condition added by the zoning commission was the tower with the flag. I was just curious. Out in Arizona, I've seen those towers look like cacti and painted like that. Do we, this is white, but do we have any, just in case it would be painted military color?
That could
So
happen.
that could be.
We've never had someone come in with a proposal like that. We had one we talked about that didn't quite come about that would have been part of a bell tower of a church. I've seen them where they look like metal trees in some other communities. And we actually have one, I believe it's just one here in town that is actually a extended light in one of our big box retail parking lots. This is actually a cell tower, but it has a light on it as well, and you don't even realize that that's a cell tower there. And we do have a couple of places in town where we have flags as towers as well.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, Madam Clerk.
So we have one speaker, Mr. Tom Johnson.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, we'll open the public hearing.
Thank you. Tom Johnson again, and I, again, will address, I would like to address up front what Mr. Hurst pointed out. We do paint these, and are glad to do so in the given circumstances. Obviously, that becomes an additional maintenance thing. So we tend to stick with galvanized steel because over time it weathers and tends to blend in a variety of conditions. For instance, if it's a clear day and blue sky, you paint a tower blue, then it blends in with the blue sky. But on a gray, dark, rainy day, it may not blend in very well at all and may stick out. So we've generally found that galvanized steel fits. Now, with this being a flagpole, obviously painting it white makes sense with the flagpole. Something I will point out, though, that you need to be aware of, obviously, is with the conventions for flying a flag, I can't say that this tower won't be lighted. It will be lighted to light the flag, and will need to be so because we will not be able to take the flag down every day. It will need to stay there. But there, I don't know if you've been to Raleigh recently. There is a flagpole above Crabtree Valley Mall right at the interchange of the 440 Beltline and 70 right there. That flagpole you see there is is a tower. So I did want to make you aware of that. There, that's the most visible one that I can think of. And as Mr. Harmon stated, there are others around Fayetteville as well. We tried to place this one with infrastructure with infrastructure. So you've got a major interchange. Again, we're trying to cover those that travel along that major interchange in Fayetteville. The other part of that is there's a high voltage transmission line, so we try to place these towers where they'll blend in with the surrounding infrastructure, such as a high voltage line. I will say we did have to go through some hoops with Duke Energy. We did, and I got this today, we did satisfy those requirements. They do require that we be at least 25 feet from the anchor point of their guy anchors for their high voltage transmission line. I did get a letter today from Duke Energy that certifies that we meet that requirement. So I do have that to submit as part of the record. And we also receive the FAA approval for this tower subsequent to my submission. So I will submit these and ask that the application and all associated documentation, as well as this documentation, including Mr. Smathers' qualifications, be submitted into the record. And I will hand these to the clerk.
Anything else, Mr. Johnson?
I can go over the pictures if you want to see those again. Again, this is just, I've got some pictures. I can go through these. Again, this is the location of the tower. This is the need. Shows without the tower, and I actually have white space on this one that we're trying to cover. White space is no signal. This is what this tower will do with the coverage right here. It's short, so it doesn't have as much of an expanse, but it'll help cover that crucial area there, including the military business park. This is what Mr. Harmon's already shown you. This is the site plan like you saw previously, and you can show the distance from the guy anchors right here. We actually had a surveyor go out and mark those. And this is just an aerial view of the site. There's just really not much going on there. There's been more actually site work on the site since this picture was even taken because it's part of that military business park. This is what it'll look like with the flag on there. It's basically the same tower I just showed you a moment ago, but it has a flag on it. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. We'll close the public hearing. Council, any questions for Mr. Johnson?
I do have one quick question.
Mr. Arp.
Sir, the flag that's going to be on there, is that something that you folks will maintain since you're going to hang the flag?
We have to hang the flag and maintain it under the condition, which we accept the conditions that were put on there by staff and by the zoning commission, which is what we're used to doing when we have to have a flagpole.
Okay, there's nothing worse than seeing Old Glory looking ratty.
And you'll have our number. You can call if it starts to. I can't, periodically someone goes at least on a once to twice a month basis to check, but we can't say if a big storm comes through, it could be damaged, and we'll bring attention to it when it's brought to our attention.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wright.
Yes, sir. I'm just curious as to know what is the lifespan of the poles and the maintenance that you guys maintain from time to time.
Our leases are typically for 20 to 25 years, so they're made to at least last that long, but they last much longer than that. I mean, really, the infrastructure that was in place when the industry was at its beginnings, when you first started having mobile wireless service, that infrastructure is still in place and used today. So these are maintained. They are inspected regularly. Inspection reports are turned in with respect to these towers, and actually folks climb these towers and take pictures of them. These not so much. The lattice towers, the taller towers, they'll climb and actually take pictures of all the cross members and inspect them periodically. So yes, there is an inspection program, and yes, they are kept up to date. Just American Tower is a landlord like any other building landlord, and they want to make sure that their asset is in good shape, and they will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wright. Anyone else? I'll entertain a motion. Councilmember Hurst.
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor, with the conditions.
In meeting the 8 requirements?
Yes, 8 requirements.
Second.
I have a first and second, Council. I'll ask for your vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Any other questions on the motion? Okay, I'll ask for your vote. Thank you.
Whose district was that in?
Madam Clerk, that's unanimous as well. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Move on to 9.01, Mr. Shuford. It's good to see you, sir.
Yes, sir. Good to be seen. Let's see. Mayor and council members, this is a discussion of the zero lot line standards. It's not a public hearing for tonight, but the intent of this is to bring forward a modification to those standards to allow zero lot line development in additional zoning districts and to create some processes that are substantially similar to what had been in place in the past, but certainly simpler than what we have currently. Now, what zero lot line is, it's a tool to provide flexibility in setbacks and lot dimensions to when 2 or more structures are intended to be constructed. As far as the benefits, it enables developers to maximize allowed density. If you have an odd-shaped site or a constrained site, they become more usable and infill development becomes more feasible. Now, of course, there's concern. On small sites, there can be some incompatibility with existing neighborhood form, and we think we have that concern covered in this ordinance. The approval process is simplified in 2 ways. First, the zero lot line developments that meet some objective standards are approved by staff. And that will be most of the cases that will come before you or before us will be ones that we can approve as staff. Additionally, we have zero lot line developments that do not meet those objective standards, and they will undergo a public hearing before the Planning Commission. Now, I want to make sure that council's aware that these changes have been endorsed both by neighborhood and developer representatives as we've gone through this process. The proposed changes, complex table is deleted. Zero lot line would be allowed in all the base zoning districts rather than just a limited number. It clearly includes design standards to enhance compatibility with neighborhoods. And finally, it creates a simpler process than what we currently have in place that is really a 2-step process, a hearing before the zoning commission and then another hearing before you as a special use permit. Now, a little background: under our old code before the Unified Development Ordinance, zero lot line required a neighborhood meeting and 1 hearing before the Planning Commission. And currently, right now, it requires a special use permit. So that's 2 quasi-judicial hearings for these smaller projects, less than 3 acres. So what's being proposed is that most of the zero lot line projects on small sites will be approved by staff because most of them in the past have typically met the standards that we have in the ordinance. But some of them will have that one public hearing before the Planning Commission. We put into our ordinance here a change that really reinforces the fact that the design standards that are inherent to most types of development in the city also apply with the zero lot line developments, and we also have a couple of issues in there that improve the compatibility, we think, with surrounding developments. And then the ones that may be less compatible do require that hearing through a new process that we're calling a neighborhood compatibility permit. And like most of the procedures that we have, unlike the Board of Adjustment, which you heard from tonight, which is a board that makes its decisions unilaterally, and the appeal is not to you, but actually to Superior Court, neighborhood compatibility permits can be appealed to City Council, and that can be an appeal by an interested party or by the applicant. So you have a variety of options here tonight. You can approve it as presented. You can remand it and send it back to the Planning Commission with any direction you might want to do. You can approve it with additional changes. You can deny it or table the text amendment. And you might want to do that if you're interested in gaining additional public input, because you would not be able to take public comment tonight without us taking it back and re-advertising and giving everyone an opportunity to come out and speak on it. So our recommendation and that of the Planning Commission is for you to approve the proposed changes tonight. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shuford. Council, any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that this zero lot line be approved as outlined on the presentation tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Council. Any discussion on the motion? I'll ask for your vote. Madam Clerk, that is unanimous. Thank you. Are you also doing 9.02, Mr. Shuford?
Yes, sir, I am.
Great.
If I can find it. There it is. Mayor and council members, we've got some demolition recommendations here for you tonight. We've got two that are determined to be blighted and one a dangerous situation. None of the properties are historic. The first one is in Council District 2, Miss Davies District, and that's 2524 Carriage Road. We've had some 9/11 service activity and some code violations. There's about $1,500 in outstanding assessments for lot cleaning. We conducted a blighted building hearing for this project on September 18, and a property owner appeared and indicated that the repairs would be completed, and we've had no further response since that time. The property is located east of Cedar Creek Road between Dunham and L.A. Dunham and Locks Creek Road. And there are no questions on this one. I'll move to the next item on the list.
Council, any questions? Thank you.
918 Ellis Street. Surprisingly, no code violations in the past 24 months, but we do have some assessments that are apparently very long-standing. Some 9/11 calls. This is also in Council District 2, Miss Davies District, and we had our hearing on it. The property owners appeared at the hearing. That was back in July of last year, and we have not heard anything with regard to improvements to the property. This is located west of the Martin Luther King Freeway between Turnpike Road and Ashley Street, shown here as that hatched area on the map. Our last one, this one's actually a dangerous building. It's not a blighted situation, but this is 710 State Avenue, Council District 4, Mr. McDougall's area. No 911 calls, but the utilities have been disconnected for a long time if we have no record of them being disconnected. We do have 3 code violations, but there's no outstanding assessments or outstanding taxes. We held our dangerous building hearing on July 24th of last year. We did have a property owner appear at the hearing and indicated some interest in the acquisition and demolition program offered by our Community Development Office, but no action has happened as far as that was concerned. Application was given to them. They have not responded. This particular property is located east of Murchison Road between Slater and Newark Avenues. Our requested action is for you to authorize staff to proceed with the demolition of the 2 blighted structures and the 1 dangerous structure, and their addresses are listed here.
Council questions? Motion? Mr. McDougall.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we follow the directions of the staff and demolish the said properties.
Second.
Have a first and second. Council, discussion on the motion? I'll ask for your vote. Madam Clerk, that is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hume, 9.03, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At FAST, we've been striving to develop partnerships with others that would help both promote transit as well as to expand our image and our impact on the community. And so we approached the county schools, with a program that's been very successful in other cities, and that program is one that would allow students participating in after-school activities to ride our buses for free. We're not putting additional services out there, but we would be providing services. Our passes and rides that would be really managed by the club sponsors and coaches. And we've met with the athletic directors of the schools. Actually, I have Pamela Stevenson from Terry Stanford High School, who's one of the counselors here that's interested in this program. It's one, again, where the coaches and the club sponsors would be helping us manage that. I believe it's a benefit to transit in that we'll be touching more people with our services, as well as helping more young people recognize the benefit of transit as they proceed in their lives. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Council, any questions? Great partnership. Mr. McDougall.
My question is about the time. I think, what I saw was 3 to 8 p.m. I haven't had to pick children up for a while, but if I remember correctly, some activities went on longer than that, or is it that the bus service ended at that time? I don't know why that time, 3 to 8.
We put that time front because that would be the practice times that we thought, but there's nothing, we could expand it. We do have bus service out on the street until about 10:30 at night on about 8 of our routes.
Yeah, I was thinking like game night. Maybe they needed to ride the bus. Game maybe not over to 10. I don't know.
Okay. We wanted to start it, but we wanted to make sure that it was used for this purpose and not used for any other purpose. That's why we had the recommended
They
time
have to
limit.
find another way.
Pardon me?
On game night, they need to find another way. They can't ride the bus.
If it was approved at 8 o'clock, again, don't have a really big objection to expanding it, other than we wanted to make sure that we weren't creating a problem, but we were really solving a problem.
I was just curious about that.
Yes, sir. I think this is a fantastic program and partnership. I was just curious, how will you know that the children that are riding are students that are participating in this versus regular patrons? Do they have to show some type of
We plan to have them show an identification card along with the pass that we provide. And again, it'd be a special pass just for this purpose that the coaches would give to those that are in need.
Okay, thank you.
Goodness gracious. Mr. Wright.
Yes, I think it's an outstanding program that you have, and it's indicative of transit, the visions for the future of our city. And I just want to appreciate that and those that partner with you, looking out for our children and getting them involved and providing transportation for them to get back and forth, which will solve a lot of the problems when it comes to helping our children get involved with these type of activities. And I just wanted to say that's a great job. Thank you.
Great partnership. Ms. Jensen.
Hi, I also appreciate what you're doing. I think it's a great partnership for everybody. My question is, during the summer months, it seems that the football starts, the basketball starts, the track starts. Would that be an option for the kids? Because I know that they start in the morning and they go till night. They have all their summer games. Would that also be an option to have it during the summer months?
It would be. It's something we probably need to work on with particularly with coaches that have those to make sure that we get them to the right time. The ease of having the 3 to 8 or 3 to some time it's easy for us to manage from an operator point of view as to when we're going to accept those passes.
Right.
And that's one of the, from an administrative point of view.
I know in my district, I know that we do have some students that they leave the high school and they walk to the bus stop, and I'm assuming now that they have been paying for it. So I was thinking maybe during the summer that we could work something out when the football team does come. Maybe the coaches could give them the pass when they leave around 12 or 1, and they can walk to their bus stop.
Mayor Pro Tem Davey.
Mr. Hume, I was just going to recommend, and instead of putting the 3 to 8 times, just if they already have the passes, and we'll just honor that through the time period.
Through the end of the night.
Through whenever the route runs. Okay. Mr. Art.
Well, I just wanted to highlight that. I want to build off of what Mr. McDougall asked and what Ms. Jensen and Ms. Davey just spoke to. During the summertime, 1 August is typically the starting period for all your fall sports. And of course, during August, most of these teams, due to heat, practice early in the morning, and then they practice late in the evening. And they, if it doesn't get dark to 8:30, they're out on the practice field taking advantage of the cooler temperatures in the evening. So that's a concern I have, is for these kids. A lot of them, due to that time frame, won't be able to get through. And then if they're playing basketball at the high school level, their games aren't over till 9 or after. So it's great to have that capability while they're practicing. But for some of them that want to participate, maybe they don't have the means to get there even on game night. It provides an avenue. I know a lot of coaches go out of their ways to help our young people, and this is just a great opportunity for them. So thank you for looking into this, but I certainly like the idea of the expanded hours to cover these athletes. Another question.
Go ahead, Mr.
And we said it's for other activities as well.
Yes, it's not
band.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
As long as they have the pass issued by the school.
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, council, seeing no other lights, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we adopt the resolution as proposed by the staff.
Second.
Have a first and a second. Council, any questions? Let's call for a vote. Madam Clerk, that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Hume. We'll move to 9.05.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Just a moment to pull up my PowerPoint. My name's Rebecca Rogers-Carter, for those of you that I haven't worked with. It's my first presentation in front of the new council, so I'm excited to be here. I'll be working with you very closely over the next few weeks, certainly with your strategic planning process. So, okay, Council, the agenda item 9.05 this evening reviews the strategic planning priorities set forth in the adopted strategic plan, that's fiscal year 2014, and this reports the progress made thus far, so mid-year. As you know, the strategic plan sets forth the direction and goals of the City of Fayetteville and helps guide the action of city staff and council. In fiscal year 2014, we focused our process on understanding what kind of outcomes it takes to achieve the vision for our community. We also worked to narrow down our strategic priorities, or what we call our targets for action, to a manageable number this year. There are 13, and that makes plans to begin tracking performance, engaging how well we are doing. Strategic planning is the process that assists council as representatives of the community to plan for our community's future and to lead with vision. In the classic story of Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll illustrates this point. Upon entering Wonderland, Alice asked the cat which way she ought to go, to which the cat replied that, well, then that depends a great deal on where you'd like to be. Mr. Carroll was correct. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. In other words, it's important for us to think long-term on where our community wants to be in the future when deciding the way we ought to go today. It's also important to look back at where we've been. And this is especially true as our organization is a local government. Fayetteville has taken advantage of its unique location and history. And I don't have a picture to share with you, but in 1811, our population for the village of Fayetteville was 3,500. By 1911, we grew to more than 35,000, and as you can see, I do have a picture for that for you, the community drove horse-drawn carriages on plank roads. There were very few lined trees, electrical wires, they hung above, and I'm sure, I wasn't there, but I'm sure that was considered innovation at the time. Today, we're a city of more than 200,000, and from these pictures, you can see a real difference in the municipal services, in the streets. We're looking at sidewalks, the trees, the landscape, cleanliness, real investment in the community by the community. Now, with dwindling resources or stagnant revenue that we see in local governments, we have so many differing services competing for the same resources. The city stays focused on these priorities and innovations through the strategic planning process. So what will Fayetteville, I would ask you, what would Fayetteville look like in 2115? Will your children live here? Are we prepared to invest in the technology solutions and an effective infrastructure? As the city of Fayetteville continues to grow and thrive, the City Council looks to chart that course with the strategic plan. Now, this model aligns the city programs and spending with long-term goals. It brings critical needs into focus and provides an organizational roadmap for success. Now, in the last few years, we've institutionalized a number of processes that will keep our community moving forward, but they require discipline and long-term planning. The city's strategic plan is a critical component of that larger system of planning. And from this graphic, you can see this strategic plan actually feeds into this budget process, and it provides direction for that process and for operations. And in an effort to promote greater accountability for results, over the last few months, city staff worked to develop a program inventory with objectives and with performance measures. During this year's budget deliberations, you'll notice a shift in focus from departmental budgets to programmatic budgeting. Council, you'll have an opportunity to, during your retreat next week, to hear more about this effort and to dive deeper into prioritizing your objectives, looking at performance measures in order to keep our community on track. And this is really where we begin to evaluate our services so we can provide better results and really improve communication with our citizens. So now I'm going to take you through a brief look at the strategic planning process for the city, and then we'll touch on a few highlights that we've seen thus far. Now, Council's developed a strategic planning model that takes Council and staff through an annual process of understanding where we are as an organization, where we want to go, and how we'll get there. There are 4 significant phases in our approach. The goal of phase 1 is really to gather the input that will allow the city to assess the current internal and external environments. This is similar to what you would call SWOT analysis. This year, we incorporated more input from staff and citizens to shape the priorities of the plan and to focus on areas of unity and common interests. We conducted an employee survey and a citizen satisfaction survey, and both these surveys garnered valuable input and analysis, all of which flowed into the council strategic planning process. We also held a senior management team retreat, which helped to identify emerging issues for council consideration and planning. And in February of 2013, Fountain Works, the consulting firm, met with City Council in a 2-day planning retreat. Now, this session included opportunities for participants to build upon ideas and to interact in open communication and conversation. The City Council reviewed the input and began charting a course for the future. They drew from environmental scans, determined our path the organization must follow in order to reach that community's vision. They worked to confirm the 5-year goals, which we will see in just a moment. And in preparation for the budget development, City Council prioritized those elements for the 1-year action plan. Now, again, we call these targets for action here at the city, or TFAs, and these are the activities that City Council and staff will spend a majority of their time working hand in hand to bring each target for action to a successful conclusion. After the retreat, staff provides council information and feedback on those items of interest, and then typically council will meet several more times to refine or prioritize the elements of the plan before it is adopted and implemented with the budget process. In fiscal year 2014, council aimed to narrow the targets for action and developed a set of decision filters that helps them prioritize which actions should be taken. Quite simply, our strategic planning model includes a vision statement, a mission statement for our organization, core values, 5-year goals, and an annual work plan. During the process, council had an opportunity to really think about their vision for the community's future. In a collaborative effort, the vision statement for our community reflects the collective understanding for the ideal city of Fayetteville in 10 years. The vision statement was revised slightly to emphasize the importance of engaged citizens having confidence in their local government. And also it was revised to reflect having opportunities for individuals and families to thrive. The statement reflects the standard of living that we hope to achieve with our actions today. The mission statement really identifies for our organization our role in pursuing that vision. It focuses our efforts on providing quality municipal services that make Fayetteville a great place to live. And the core values of the city of Fayetteville are really the defining characteristics of how we operate here at the city. City council and employees serve the community with respect. Now, the council set forth 6 goals which outline the path our organization must follow in order to reach that community vision. The council identified 6 goals, again, to achieve in 5 years. For each of those goals, though, council identified targets for action and, for the first time, some performance measures. At the start of this fiscal year, Fayetteville was one of the very few and probably the only large municipality in North Carolina that did not have some sort of performance management system already in place. Council's focus on accountability and transparency really came through with the incorporation of performance measures. The big difference here with this report as relating to the last is that not only will you receive target for action updates, but also performance measures as well. We're going to begin to incorporate that performance measures that tell us how efficient and effective that we're being. Now, the transition to program budgeting and performance management was a change management process. The city prepared for this by assessing the organizational gaps, developing strategy, and building tools needed to transition the city from departmental budgeting to program budgeting and performance management. We developed a team structure to assign roles and build accountability, and we implemented a communication plan and also training. We call this effort the PRIDE program, meaning that we would focus on program performance, results, integration into our organizational culture. We're going to plan to make some data-driven decisions and evaluate our process for improvements. And our initial work focused on program inventory. Currently, we have about 70 programs and 900, I think, performance measures, but again, they'll need to be refined over the coming weeks. Without defining those programs, it really is impossible to identify objectives, those things that we're trying to achieve, and how we're measuring our progress. So that's pretty important. Again, we'll be fine-tuning these in the coming months and incorporating them into the work that you will be doing during your strategic planning retreat. Let's take a quick look at the goals and some of the advancements that we've seen thus far. The results of the citizen survey echoed City Council and City staff's number one priority of having a safe and secure community. And to stress that importance, City Council added a goal specifically and strongly focused on just that. To have a safe and secure community really is fundamental to the quality of life in our city. The objectives and targets for action under this goal ensure the preservation of life, property, and environment, and the commitment to leading the community in their problem-solving efforts. We must work assertively to assess the systematic issues that lead to crime and disorder. Under this goal, the semi-annual report includes police and fire statistics from 2013. Now, as of the report date, police and crime clearance rates were not available, so they will be in the next few weeks, and we'll be glad to get you that information, but they're not in this report. We were able to gather response rates, traffic safety incidents, public safety levels, and types of responses. Moving forward, again, we'll begin to build that systematic approach to measuring, gathering, analyzing, and reporting on key measures. That's going to allow us in the future to benchmark our progress, not only on ourselves, but our peer cities, and really evaluate our success at meeting real performance targets. That's the plan. This report also includes significant advancements with increased law enforcement collaboration through the sector lieutenant models that strengthen those relationships within the community. We were also awarded a grant for establishing the Educating Kids About Gun Violence program. And we continue to implement strict and fair enforcement activities with the Crash Analysis Reduction Strategies, or the CARS program. The second goal is that the City of Fayetteville will have a strong, diverse, and viable economy. The city is fostering economic health and vitality for our community by creating jobs and supporting strategic industry initiatives. This report includes performance measures such as the estimated tax base, the median wage for Fayetteville, and an unemployment comparison. We also included statistics from your community development department. The targets for action under this goal, there was only one. It was to implement local business initiatives. Community development staff is in the process of enhancing programs to focus on the city's corridors, encouraging commercial redevelopment. And in August 2013, City Council approved the task force scope of work that will guide and under the general direction of the joint partnership between the City Manager's Office and the Alliance. And I'd also like to say that Mr. Russ Rogerson from the Alliance is here with a brief update on that economic development work for the second quarter, and he will be following my comments. And he'll have some more comments on economic development. The third goal of the city is to be a well-designed city with high-quality infrastructure, and here we're really just focusing on our built environment. Performance measures such as the Quality of Street Index, building inspections, and a comparison of peer cities in North Carolina showing that Fayetteville is among the fastest in processing site plans and rezoning cases. These are all included in your report. We've also provided an update on our successful RAMP program, which is a tool for improving the quality of life and revitalizing those deteriorating neighborhoods. Now, RAMP is a success because it acts as a huge deterrent factor for code violations and nuisance abatement. It solves the problem of chronic violators. It's like the seatbelt ordinance enforcement. It has to be enforced in order to work. And additionally, a target for action under this goal is to increase street maintenance funding and shorten the time for resurfacing. Now, you'll notice a red indicator here. The city is currently operating at a 36-year resurfacing cycle. No additional funding was provided in fiscal year 2014 for the program. but staff did provide the resource need that would be needed to achieve either a 30-year or a 20-year cycle. I believe they'll bring forward more information during the budget deliberations. So the fourth goal of the city is to be a highly desirable place to live, work, and recreate. This goal ensures that the city promotes good quality of life for residents and visitors. And we have a growing population with young professionals and families moving here to enjoy the communities surrounding them. The city works to ensure that neighborhoods are thriving and connected and that public transportation is accessible. We've included performance measures that are relevant to this goal, such as the Park and Recreation Program participation levels. We've included FAST statistics for 2013. We have included a recent customer survey for our airport, the litter index, and measures for the residential and recycling program. The targets for action under this goal were to revisit the funding plan for the Parks and Recreation package with smaller or phased packages, and also to develop that traffic flow improvement strategy. The plan to revisit the Park and Recs package was placed on hold until we received council direction during the new strategic planning retreat. And staff is making progress on the traffic flow strategy development as they partner with NCDOT and FAMPO. They plan to present their findings in March. City Council recognizes that when leaders are moving in the same direction and the organization has the capacity to complete its directives, we all get there faster. This is the essence of the next city goal, which is to have unity of purpose and leadership and sustainable capacity within the organization. We are deeply committed to delivering high-quality services in an efficient manner. Sustainability, stewardship, customer service, and innovation are 4 priorities that drive policy and management decisions. To that end, we've included updates on performance measures, which include the gross turnover, per capita tax burden, and the city's bond rating. We've also included an update on the city's transition to program budgeting and performance management. An update is provided for each of the 3 targets for action in your report. We are working to organize an employee recognition program, which includes establishing a city council liaison and an employee committee. The committee will vet ideas and interests and develop specific recommendations for the program. City Council also attended the city employees' picnic and also their service awards. And our IT department has been very busy with implementing several large IT initiatives with Granicus and CityWorks. And finally, Council wisely noted that the city on its own cannot achieve its vision, but it will take strong partnerships with others and other organizations to get that job done. The city of Fayetteville doesn't just hear, we're listening. And we know that citizens want to feel like a part of an engaged community. Citizens values opportunities to participate in government and to be a part of that decision-making process. There have been quite a lot of progress in this goal over the last 6 months, and we are very excited to announce that we recently launched FayettevilleOutFront.com. I know many of you have been talking about that with your constituents. It is a civic engagement website that enables citizens to interact with each other, staff, and elected officials on ideas they feel are important to improving the quality of life for everybody. Staff launched also the city's first government access channel, and it continues to build programming. In the last 6 months, they've also expanded Facebook and Twitter by 40%. Developing and maintaining partnerships was also a target for action this year, and Community Conversation was the initiative to do just that. This is a program that enables the city to work in partnerships with citizens and other organizations. Staff coordinated with a consultant the initial citywide conversation, which took place January 20th, under the theme Working Together for Fayetteville's Success. This event brought together about 150 participants in facilitated conversations. It was citizens' chance really to weigh in on what they felt, what they would like to see for the future of the city of Fayetteville. The conversation solicited feedback on systematic issues and recommendations moving forward. Council will receive a preliminary report on the results during the upcoming strategic plan retreat. Strategic plan has provided organizational focus for large issues and a method to prioritize. Council's strategic planning retreat is vital to the continued success and progress that our city has experienced. So, as a reminder, moving into next week's City Council retreat, the retreat will be held at the Embassy Suites, February 7th and 8th. Fountainworks Consulting Firm will again facilitate. The retreat agenda is being finalized on Wednesday with the City Manager's Office and will be distributed to Council as soon as it is available. There'll be a few presentations on critical issues that are facing our city. And in an effort to share information ahead of time this evening, I brought with me a handout containing 2 reports prepared by Fountainworks. It's underneath of your report this evening, and they are really a report out on the senior management team strategic planning retreat and also the boards and commissions engagement session. I also want to remind you that the citizen survey, if you want information about that, that's posted on the city's website. And during the retreat, we will plan to discuss input gained through those efforts and a community conversations event. And I look forward to working with each of you. And that brings my comments to a close this evening. Staff is requesting that council move to accept the report as provided with guidance to the city manager in areas of interest, or I'd be glad to entertain any questions that you may have before I invite Mr. Russ Rogerson up.
Thank you, Rebecca. Councilmember Art.
Rebecca, a couple questions. One, you mentioned that there was a survey that was done with employees and citizens, and at your conclusion, you said the citizen survey is posted. What about the employee survey?
We do have information about that. I know that the process is posted on the website. I'm not sure that the entire report is posted on the website, but I can
I'd
get
like
that
to see the
you.
entire report.
Okay.
And I think that should be available to the public as well.
All right.
The second thing is your performance measures. I mean, I saw the charts and they look nice, and I don't mean to be critical because you always do a nice job with your presentations. But my question is, what were we measuring against? You know, we said for example, with the roads, no funding was allocated. Was funding allocated before? Was funding allocated 5 years ago? I mean,
Right.
how are we measuring success when we look at these things? To me, I'm always thinking in compare and contrast.
You're exactly right, sir. This is just the beginning, and honestly, we looked at the strategic plan as produced in fiscal year 2014. You're exactly right. The most meaningful information for those performance measures don't come from simply a number. It comes from comparison, it comes from benchmarking, and also you really have to understand what drives that number. And also what we're trying to tell. Are we trying to get at whether or not we're being efficient? Are we trying to understand how effective we're being in our operations? We have a long way to go to build that system. Currently, there isn't a organizational-wide system to gather, track, measure, report any of these performance measures. But that's something that I'm working toward
I know
currently.
you're working on that. One last question, or one last thing I would offer, is you had in your last slide that during the retreat that we would review the performance measures. I would suggest that we not review them. I would suggest that the council would set the performance measures, that we would establish them. Now, staff would come in with recommendations, but the council would set performance measures, and then we would measure against that.
Yeah, that is certainly your prerogative. One of the things that I'm working to have available to you, I know I mentioned it in my presentation, but we've really focused on developing those program budgets, and what that looks like. If you'll allow me just a moment, what that looks like is really articulating within their department that group of activities that sets forth that program and articulating those. They departments have actually come up with objectives that are measurable and performance measures, quite a few of them. So our next step would be to identify those measures they feel are key, but also to hear from you what measures you feel are key. And it's not just about picking the performance measures, it's about actually picking the targets for which we'd like to hit next year or 2 years down the road. They absolutely have to be what I consider SMART, specific, measurable, attainable. So I agree, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Moon.
Thank you again for the presentation. You mentioned that we're going to be at the Embassy Suites Hotel this year, and the room that we're in, back when we were at the airport, very small, you only get a couple citizens in there. the room that we're going to be in next Friday and Saturday, is it larger?
Yes.
And so citizens need to know that it's open to the public. You
is
could show up, right? And so now that we have more space, more citizens should be able to show up. And so just want to confirm that it is open to the public, and we encourage people to show up and watch our 2-day process.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why we switched venues. That's the main reason that we were looking for a larger venue that would accommodate more people. One of the things you should know also that during the boards and commissions strategic planning engagement session, we personally invited each of them to come, spread the word that the strategic planning retreat, is being held February 7th and 8th. So I look forward to seeing some of them. One of the things that we'll work toward as well as performance measures. And I was just listening to some of the reports, which is great, from the boards and commissions. But they have statistics and measures also, and that does tell a story as well. And I think that can also be incorporated into our strategic planning reporting. So,
Mr. Moan, that's a good point. Thank you for that. And of course, council will have the floor at the retreat and be able to communicate back and forth with staff, but it will not be an opportunity for citizen input. We have other venues for that. Thank you. Next is Councilmember Wright.
Yes, Rebecca, is that?
yes, sir.
A great presentation, and I think it's very important that we understand the strategic plan going ahead. And you mentioned something about a grant for gun violence, a gun violent grant program, given the crime, the gun crime, death by gun, fire and violence in our city. I think it's very important, it's imperative that this grant will be effective. And I wanted to know what are some of the things that you're doing with this gun violent program to make a difference in gun violence?
Okay. Well, I can give that a shot. I'm not the police chief. He's not here, but I know a little bit about
So he's
that.
the one that's implementing the program.
His staff certainly is. They are actually in the process of filming and post-production of developing this curriculum. They call it an EKG program. They're conducting, I think what they're doing is they're conducting assessments for instructors so that they will, it's sort of like train the trainer type of thing. But I know it has something to do with videos and that kind of thing. And it's really to reach out to the young, I'd say, high schoolers, teenagers, and really educating them about gun violence.
EKG is actually, I'm sorry to jump in, is targeted towards 7th grade, and that's educating kids against guns.
Okay,
EKG.
7th graders. Is that what?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, that's the grant that was offered.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Councilmember Coleman.
How are you tonight? Appreciate the presentation. I was looking for it in, you gave us a lot of information, and so I saw the number one goal was safe and secure communities according to the previous strategic plan. I saw somewhere in your presentation where it said that there was a survey taken for the percentage of citizens that felt safe in the community.
Yes.
Is that information available online?
Yes,
and
sir.
what were those numbers? Because I think we missed that, or I missed it maybe during your presentation.
I didn't actually have room, I didn't want to expand this report any further, but there's a huge report out from the citizen survey, and that is posted. If you go to the city's website, and at the top you'll see government, you click on that, and it's going to pull down a drop menu, and you'll see the strategic plan, click on that. That page in and of itself will give you a basic rundown of our process, but it also has a video of me being interviewed about the citizen survey. It has a copy of the citizen survey and a copy of the report. There's a lot of data in that citizen survey, and it's really hard, just as Councilmember Arp was saying, to pick and choose which particular attribute or question we really want to follow, because there's so many, but it is posted on the city's website.
Okay, well, I'll look into that. I know that crime is a major priority for most of us, and I just was interested to hear how many of our citizens on a percentage basis felt that this was a safe community.
It's interesting on the very end part of that. The consultant, what they did was they came up with a measure of satisfaction and importance. So if something was very important to a citizen, but they were highly dissatisfied, it rose to the top. So there's this mathematical calculation that goes into play when they look at cross tabulation of the results. So that's where they're getting it. And when you look at that report, if you'll look at one of the pages in there that actually has like a quad schematic or graphic, and it shows very clearly how they came to those conclusions of what were the highest priorities for citizens. And one of them was a safe and secure community. Another one was the traffic flow too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Pro Tem Davey.
I would like to move that we accept the report as provided by staff.
Second.
Okay. Council, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask for your vote. That is unanimous, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you the next couple of weeks at the retreat.
Certainly. Russ, come on up. Saving the best for last here.
Russ likes to hear that.
So I said it. Okay.
Thanks. Evening, Mayor and Council. This too is my first time before most of you, and I appreciate the opportunity. I'm here to tell you our second quarter dashboard report for the Economic Development Alliance. The Economic Development Alliance of Fayetteville and Cumberland County is going on 2 years old. It is a byproduct of the Garner report, which is a much larger, deeper dive into economic development in our community. We appear quarterly to run through some measurements that we have as our organization.
Russ, can I stop you? I apologize for
Sure.
interrupting you. So many members of the council are new and don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind introducing yourself and what you do and who you're with?
Sure. Russ Rogerson. I'm the Executive Vice President at the Fayetteville Regional Chamber, and I am the Executive Director of the Economic Development Alliance, which is a committee of the Chamber. We were separated underneath it, but exist under the Chamber umbrella short of 2 years ago. We used to operate collectively as a chamber. It addressed chamber concerns as well as economic development concerns and programs. The Garner report is a report that we had commissioned about 2 years ago. They recommended that we separate out economic development, and we separated the funding, we separated the management of it, although we do reside under the chamber umbrella for those continuities and economies of scale, because we also share a very similar mission. So the Alliance does a program of work, and from that program of work is what you're going to see a report on here this evening. Our board is made up of a mixture of private and public representatives. You can see that we're 50-50 with private and public. Obviously, our funding comes from the city, from the county, and from the private sector. You can see that our board is, most of the public members of our board are by position, mayor, city manager, county manager, county commission chair, as well as PWC board chair and general manager. And then we have private sector folks representing investors, also the Plant Managers Association, the chamber, and that sort of rounds out our board membership. For the end of the second quarter of this fiscal year, we have 23 active projects. 100% are related to new business and industry. The combined capital investment potential of all 23 projects is in excess of $1 billion. and jobs identified with those projects are in excess of 5,000. Now, these are the projects that we are working with. Manufacturing projects make up 85% of those 23, and then you can see a list of some of the most submitted sites that we have for inquiries on those projects. Capital investment and jobs announcement. In the second quarter, we had one announcement, and that amounted to the addition of 32 jobs. In the first quarter, we had an announcement as well, and that was the addition of 25 jobs, and you can see the investment. One of the things we also report here is the commercial construction and federal government and multifamily developments. Obviously, we do not work with those projects, but we report those dollars in essence to show you just kind of the activity level in our community. Our announcement for this past quarter was Bosch Global Services. They chose to locate and expand here in Fayetteville over a competing location in Virginia. They will be investing some $400,000, but adding 32 very high-paying jobs, and they made that announcement in November. We're very pleased to have Bosch choose our community to expand, and working with them and looking forward to helping them continue to grow and prosper in our community. The local economy at a glance, you can look here and see that the year-to-date unemployment rate has reduced by 11.9%. But if you do look at the labor force numbers from 2012 on the left to 2013, the amount of people in the labor force has declined. And you can see the employed of 128,612 in 2012 versus 127,86.
Hey Russ, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to go back to the minus 11.9% year-to-date unemployment rate change. Can you explain that? Because I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, it went from 10.1 to 8.9, which equated to 11.9% reduction. So, 1 year, this period, same period compared.
That's employment rate reduction, not
So
rate change.
Because our unemployment rate was never 22%.
That's correct,
Yeah.
and that's not worded well. I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
But again, it's also the reduction of people in the workforce. Needless to say, job growth has been somewhat stagnant, and the unemployment rate is a difficult number because it measures points in time in those actively seeking unemployment or employment. So it becomes sort of a challenge. It's a number quite frankly used often, but we like to kind of give you perspective by showing you the actual numbers on the side. You can also see a list of our top 25 employers in Cumberland County. Existing industry, while attracting new industry and development is very important, there's nothing more important than our existing industry. These are companies that are located here, invested here, and hiring hiring employees. We visit our existing industry and keep very close contact with them. In fact, we visit in excess of 75 companies a year and have an extensive survey in which we ask them a litany of questions, as well as to keep tabs on how they're doing, what areas of concerns and growth that they have, and how we may be of assistance. You can see this past quarter the breakdown between military contractors, service providers, call centers, and industrial manufacturing operations of the 21 visits made in the past quarter. And the business dynamics report, 33% of the 21 have products maturing, 50% report products growing, and of course 17 gave no response. The good news is that 50% of our companies interviewed are increasing in sales, a third of those are stable, and we had 0 reporting a declining sales. This is part of our effort to identify companies that are growing, as well as companies that may have some challenges that we may be able to assist. There's quite a bit of language on here. but the talk about the 3 reported change in management. 11 stated there's a form of legislation that would harm the company, such as health care reform, I-95 toll sequestration, etc. 2 stated there would be a form of legislation that would benefit their company, such as mandatory background checks and state corporate tax decreases. And then 4 stated there's a form of new technology that would benefit their company and its growth. Pleased to report that 0 of these companies reported being at the risk of closing. Expansion opportunities, of those 21, 3 stated they would like to expand the next 3 years, adding new equipment and creating new jobs. 2 of those companies expressed, said that they would, job creation would be around 8 with a $200,000 capital investment. Workforce skills gaps. Of the 21 companies visited and surveyed, 6 companies reported having recruiting problems, mostly for skilled workers. 39% reported that their current recruitment issues were related to perception attributes of the community, while 61% reported that their recruitment issues were really related to the type of industry that they represented. I'm not sure that the difficulty in recruiting skilled workers is not something that's reflected in communities across the country, but this is definitely the case here for those 6. And then in the synchronous surveys, we go through and ask them to rate services in the neighborhood of 60 services. For purpose of this report, we just capture the top 5 or the highest rated services in the bottom 5. Of the top 5, economic development, because we asked the question, but also trucking, fire, air cargo, and sewer. And the bottom 5, traffic control, zoning and permitting, community services, public transportation, and property tax assessments. A big part of what we do is we market the community, and we try to get the word out about Fayetteville and Cumberland County as a place to locate. And you can see we completed RFI and RFP responses. We had 5 in the first quarter, 2 in the second quarter, as well as we had 5 visits and 2 visits in the second quarter. And then additional contacts, 2 additional contacts directly with companies in the past quarter. The marketing materials, some of the things that we're doing to get the message out about why Fayetteville and Cumberland County. We're doing a lot more in the social media area, particularly in LinkedIn. These are some nice graphics that capture, the essence of some of the workforce information, as well as quality of life. We have 2 or 3 others that we post and share that with site selection consultants, corporate site selectors, and others in the arena of economic development. Our website is probably our biggest tool. Many site selection people, including companies in this market, will do a lot of research prior to picking up the phone and calling anyone. So your website is a primary marketing tool, but also information provider. We kicked off our website about a year ago, and you can see that site visits 2,600, unique visitors 1,800, and then you see the breakdown between referral, organic, and direct visits. So as we continue to promote that website and have people drive to that website, many times what's going on today is the research done, basic number gathering. Communities are eliminated long before that phone rings, and you get a chance to touch them and do a deeper dive into what your community is all about. So the website is extremely important. We're also trying to reach out through advertising, although print advertising much less than other forms, but we're also sending out quarterly email contacts to over 4,000 site selection professionals and with messaging. And we had a pretty good open rate of 114 in August and 108 in November. And you can actually see that, we were driving people to the website as well through those emailers. It's all about getting information out and being top of mind as these site selection processes get started. Those are a quick rundown of the numbers. We do produce a quarterly report. You will be receiving a copy of that in addition to a newsletter as we try to drive some of those numbers out to you all for your review. So I'll be more than happy to take any questions.
Councilmember Colvin.
How you do, sir? I appreciate you presenting that report. Just had a question for you. I noticed you said you had in this particular report about 23 potential projects, and you had the dollar value affiliated with that. What is your criteria for including a project in that potential category? Is it the mere interest, inquiry, or do they meet a certain level of inquiry before you include them in it?
Sure. Those were companies that, or site selection consultants that we've been specifically requested information from, that we provided information to, and who have indicated a strong interest in looking at our community for location.
Thank you. Councilmember McDougal.
Russ, good to meet you.
My pleasure.
Will you provide us a copy of this? I appreciate it. And I'm not sure if my sight is not bothering me a little bit now, trying to look at the screen so long tonight for a couple of hours. And so if I can have it where I can, really tear it apart and be able to call you or Chris or somebody about what I see, I certainly would appreciate it. And I can provide you my email address if you don't.
Well, we'll just probably distribute that through the clerk or through city manager's office. We actually do a dashboard report that goes in just a little bit more detail than the slides did.
Okay.
So we'll get that to you. And I encourage very much to sit down and chance to talk in more detail about some of the things we're doing, what these numbers mean or don't mean, and I welcome that opportunity.
And Russ, as you report back next quarter, perhaps you can have that already pre-distributed or attached to the packet, please.
Will do.
On the UI rate, you probably don't do any of this, but it's something that, and you did mention it in your discussion about discouraged workers. In other words, it's hard to actually identify or to be conclusive about a rate. And part of the reason for the fall that might have occurred might have been because of discouraged workers, not because we were actually doing any better. As a matter of fact, I think you, and I, again, not having a report, I really can't say because there was one screen that was actually showing the number of workers in the market. And then you said there was a decrease in the number of workers in the market, which may, in fact, show why your rate actually went down, not because they were not still unemployed. They were simply discouraged and had been said no to so many times, they no longer go. Also, I don't know if there's somehow you can incorporate this, and I've talked to several people about it already, but I think it's something that needs to be looked at. How we, when we talk about crime is, really our number one issue. I think that there is a lot of correlation between crime and unemployment and employment. And somehow or another that needs to be factored in, I think, in your report. We could do better and, more people that are actually working, have less time to commit crime. I found it a little amazing that you just, did you have a website before?
We had a website that was, economic development was part of the chamber website. It still is. But we developed a website specifically for the Alliance.
Okay.
And we've beefed up the information and what's in the marketing aspect of driving people to that. everybody has a website, so having one is one thing, and getting people made aware of it and the right people to look at it is the challenge.
Yeah, because one of the things I thought about is think about the website, and I don't know, you probably don't need to answer this for me, but it's just a thought on my head, is for recruiters or for people that are out doing this work, actually looking for places to go, what are your key words? I mean, what is it that they're searching for? Yeah, is it in our base so that, that the Alliance will always pop up? I mean, it'll be the first on that search engine, or if not number one, number two. Because like me, when I'm searching, if it's not on that first page, I'm probably not going to go to the second page. Them first 5 or 10 items. If it's not that, I'm probably not going to look very further.
Right, and that's actually, we had a company that specializes in economic development websites build that, so we'd help get the keywords and some of the search parameters there, and then also we contracted with a firm to do additional optimization work on that. So we continue to effort in that area to get that.
Yeah, that's a real science that you really got. I mean, if we're really going to be out there, it really has to be work that real. I mean, you got to put a lot of effort in that. You got to have some smart minds. I'm not one of them, but I'm just saying here, you got to have something. Yeah. I do.
I've sought plenty of help in that area. So
okay,
yeah, I agree with you.
Good. But hopefully we'll get to know each other and and do a lot more talk.
I look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember McDougal. Councilmember Wright.
Thank you for your presentation, Russ. Just had a couple of questions, and one of them were getting a hard copy of the report you did tonight so we can have time to go over it. That's very important. The job that you guys do as the chamber is very important, strategically positioned in our community, that you guys are a very, very important role. You mentioned about unemployment, and we ran on crime, and we ran on jobs. We got voted in because I think they might have believed us that we could make a difference. And you are key in helping us to make that difference. Now, when you quoted the unemployment rates or those numbers or percentages, those percentages was not broken down. Female unemployment, black unemployment. We just did an overall unemployment rate. I think it's important because in the African American community, that unemployment is doubled to some degree. So I think in order to help crime, like Mr. McDougal has mentioned, I think that might be a good focus on where we need to go and what type of jobs we need to bring in and what type of industry we're looking at and who are the people that need these jobs to better afford a quality of life for our citizens. And so I wish we could have a breakdown here locally, here in Fayetteville, Cumberland County, just to see what the disparities are and really the target market that we really need to go at, and then what qualifications. So that means what type of employment these individuals can perform on a quality level, and if they can't, then what can we do to help these citizens to become qualified for the jobs that's coming in to our city.
And I'll work on providing, when I send this out, a little better breakdown of those numbers for you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm more than happy to do that. I think it is a team effort as we address that and as we try to attract jobs, and we certainly look forward to working with each and every one of you and collectively, because it's going to take all of us pulling in the right direction to be successful. And I pledge to you that I'll do my part in our organization. We're excited about ramping up our recruitment efforts and trying to bring more and more jobs into this community. So
thank you, Russ.
Russ,
appreciate it, Russ.
Russ, quick question. I just saw something recently. I don't know, NerdWhacker or some kind of study you guys did that we rated in the top 5 comparison, and that wasn't in your presentation tonight, that we rated up. We were ranked ahead of Huntsville, Alabama, and some other comparative markets. And can you give us some insight on that?
Sure. We ranked number 5 in the top 10 cities on the rise. And nerdwallet.com reported that. So, yeah, Gainesville, Florida, Fargo, Brownsville, Texas, Bloomington, Illinois, then Fayetteville, North Carolina. So, you know, actually, if you look at our numbers over the past 5 years, you know, we led the state in job growth and a lot of those measurements. So really, you know, it's amazing. But if you look at that, you know, we get ranked highly in a number of different publications. But we just need to work harder to get that message out and to have that success. And I apologize, I passed up an opportunity to help promote.
Ring our bell.
You got to sell yourself.
Absolutely. And one last thing, the report we're receiving tonight, is there any action required on this report, Mr. Manager? Or?
I think that's really council's pleasure. If you want to have a motion to accept the report, that's fine. But there's no follow-on action. This is just their obligation, their contract to come quarterly and give you an update.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jensen.
I appreciate the report, and it was very knowledgeable, and I've learned a lot being a new council member going through it. The question was raised about the website and the work that you had done, so I went on my iPad here and, you know, went to the website, and you were number 1. You came up first, so I went to it. And through the report, I think that the citizens would like to know a lot of what you're doing, and I think that maybe there's a marketing issue that needs to be. But I went to, you know, social media is the way it's going. So I clicked onto the Facebook page as I'm sitting here, and there's 40 members. So I think it would be a good tool for me because I try to send out when I see things that are good that are happening in Fayetteville. I try to put it on my City Council District 1 page, that maybe if y'all can get together and try to make that. You've got a lot of good information that people need to hear about and see. And I think that that's a source that you're not using, that I'm going to do my part to try to help you, is what I'm saying.
Appreciate that. And the whole social networking, we're in infancy stage.
I understand
so we're
that.
learning, we're learning how to tweet and Facebook and LinkedIn and get that message out.
But I do think that we all should probably try to help them get that.
We will retweet for you. Thank you. Councilmember Colvin.
Very quickly, sir, I don't want to belabor the point. I just had a couple questions that came up when Councilmember McDougal was asking his questions. I think that slide had basically that the actual folks employed in 2013 was 127,086 versus the 128,612 in the previous year, but that was due to decrease in the people in the market of about 3,000 people. But I think the report probably would have had a little more clarity to it had we not put the negative percentage reduction, because it's a little misleading with the fact that you've actually had a reduction in folks working versus the previous year. But to my question, the Bosch jobs that was approximately a $400,000 investment, were those newly created jobs for $400,000, or was that retention jobs or expanded?
They have an operation here, and they're going to be expanding as their contracts and opportunities expand. And those 32 jobs will be added over the next 5 years.
Okay.
So I believe and the $400,000 has to do with their investment in new facilities. They'll be leasing facilities in the community to make room for those additional jobs as they come on board.
Okay, thanks.
And that's one of the things. On those job numbers you see when we report that are announced, those are announced, and those are most likely being built over a 3 to 5 year period of time. Sometimes you'll get a new company that comes in, and they'll do X number of jobs in the first year. But most of these companies, as they announce, we ask them to project over a 3 to 5 year period of time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McDougall.
Observation. Councilmember Jensen mentioned Facebook and the association, get you out there. I consider myself a professional, and I have a Facebook page and have about 5,000 friends. And some of my friends are professionals in other areas. But when I tried to go on Facebook here at this council meeting to see if I could friend you, I have been denied the opportunity. It says here, request denied by WatchGuard, HTTP proxy.client.default.
Who would
that
deny
I should
you
see
that?
the help desk at ci.fay.nc.us. I believe that's the city of Fayetteville. So we have something we need to work on. Thank you, Council Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. I'll entertain a motion to.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Russ, for the report, but I would move that council table this report for consideration until such time as we receive a hard copy for review, and it's properly scheduled on agenda for consideration.
A second.
Okay, have a first and second. Discussion on the motion, council. Seeing none, I'll ask for your vote. That makes it unanimous, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Yes, Russ, if you would hang out just a minute, council, we'll take a 5-minute break. Be back in 4 minutes and 45 seconds.
Look at this book.
want to start playing playing that video again and stuff that's got the music.
New Harris?
Yeah.
Ms. Mann, there's a time limit.
Ladies and gentlemen, 60 seconds. And the airborne community has 1 minute. 1 minute.
Who's not ready?
You gotta start humming.
Gotta be a woman.
I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'm assuming this won't show up or anything, right? I don't have a PowerPoint, so that's not going to continue to show up, is it? Well, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will move to item 9.06, and that is the approval of bond council, and we will go to our CFO, Ms. Smith.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. As Mayor mentioned, this is consideration for approval of bond council. In the material that I provided to you, I did indicate that as way of background information, that the city did do an extensive request for qualifications process back in 2007, at which time Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge, and Rice was selected as lead bond counsel. At that time, in an interest to have a local legal firm on the financing team, council also engaged Rand and Gregory as co-counsel. Since that time, Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge, and Rice has served as our lead or sole bond counsel on the city's general obligation and revenue bond transactions. And as you may recall, at the January 6th work session, council was briefed on an upcoming proposed financing for the city's electric and wastewater utility systems. Preparation for the financing has begun, and assistance from the city's bond council will soon be required. City and PWC staff at this time believes that retaining one bond counsel firm will be more cost-effective and efficient than retaining two separate firms. Since Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge, and Rice has extensive experience serving as a bond counsel firm, they've provided excellent bond counsel services in the past, and the firm is very familiar with the city's organization, including its Public Works Commission. And we feel particularly this knowledge will be helpful as we continue to work through the items related to our shared services study. That's why we are recommending tonight that we continue to retain Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge, and Rice as our bond counsel. I will point out a couple of other items. You will have an opportunity to consider and vote on several matters in the coming months related to the proposed financing that PWC would like you to entertain. So for this evening, we're just asking about council services. As you may recall, at the January 6th work session, there was an inquiry regarding the use of a local firm to be engaged as co-bond counsel for future bond issues. As you may recall, there is no state requirement to retain a bond counsel. However, the city does have the option to select co-bond counsel if that ultimately is your desire. I did provide an attachment for you for your consideration for this item regarding transactions for the last 2 calendar years regarding North Carolina issuers and their use of bond counsel. And generally most, as you would be able to see by looking at that material, most North Carolina issuers only use one bond counsel firm for a financing transaction. The information was gathered by PWC's financial advisor, Davenport & Company, based on information that's produced publicly regarding publicly sold bond issues in North Carolina. And again, the information was for calendar year 2012 and 13. That information is included in your agenda package. The information does not include privately placed bank transactions. However, the advisor does believe that this information is an accurate representation of co-counsels and bond counsels retained for financing transactions. During 2012 and 2013, issuers retained co-bond counsel on 6 transactions out of 106, and 5 transactions out of 78, respectively, for those 2 years. Of the 11 transactions identified, 4 separate issuers were represented, and that was the state of North Carolina and 3 local governments. In that list of transactions, we identified 1 local firm, the Charleston Group, which was retained as co-counsel for 1 bond issue during the 2-year period. You have the options identified before you in your council agenda package in terms of the options we're asking for your guidance on and deliberation and decision tonight. And just as a reminder, our recommendation was to retain Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge, and Rice as the city's bond counsel. Thank you, and I'm here to entertain questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Does council have any questions for Ms. Smith? Councilmember Colvin.
Ms. Smith, how are you this evening?
Fine, thank you.
Certainly, thank you for your presentation. As I was looking over the city's overall strategic plan under the second goal of diverse and viable economies, one of the main objectives they said was to lever partnerships for job creation and retention with the focus on local and regional workforces. Okay, and that is a big concern to me that we do more business locally. Was any type of RFP, RFQ put out with local council here to see if we could get any participation? That's part A. And part B, would the fees for the co-bond counsel be paid in addition to the bond counsel's fee, or would he basically have a reduction of his fee to accommodate for the co-bond counsel? So in other words, that's basically relieving him of duties that he would normally be in charge of anyway. So is it an elevated cost for using a co-bond counsel?
We believe there is an elevated cost with retaining 2. Your first question regarding creating jobs in the local economy, certainly that is a high priority for the city, and I'm certain the city council as well. Part of the challenge we face is different interests. One is to try to have the lowest cost possible given the level of expertise and knowledge we need to do a transaction, so that's one interest. And certainly the other interest would be job creation locally. And I think just at the conclusion of the process, you'll have to determine maybe which combination of interests or interests you'll be able to accomplish. On the 2009 transaction, we did find, and this was for bond counsel fees, that approximately 40% of the bond counsel fee was retained by co-counsel. And that equated to the transaction at the time for the bond counsel, and this was a PWC utility revenue bond offering that the city issues. The total bond counsel fee was about $177,000, so bond counsel at the time retained about $70,000 of that. I can only speak to my own interaction, and my interaction has been pretty much exclusively with our bond counsel, so I can't really speak to value versus cost in regard to that particular fee. But we believe that some portion, if not all, and I certainly can't confirm that all, but we believe some portion, if not all, of that fee could have been possibly reduced by retaining one firm.
Do you have anything to back that up? Did you put out any offers?
Not for that particular bond offering, because City Council had selected the firm at the time, Rand and Gregory and Womble Carlisle, as bond counsel, and you don't generally, for each issue, don't go out and solicit bids, because part of the interest is having some continuity in terms of your bond issuances, because you're getting advice from them not just on a single event but throughout the year, and often related to past transactions. You're still inquiring and getting guidance from them. So the experience has generally been that you retain them for some period of time. This was done, I think, in 2007, and the first transaction they were involved in was in 2008. So we've had them for that period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Arp.
Mr. Mayor, I have a quick question. I noticed in looking at the information that most municipalities across the state either use the Womble-Carlisle or they use Parker Poe. Is that correct?
It could be. I didn't look at it that way. I know Womble-Carlisle, among other few firms, are represented substantially throughout the list.
And then my follow-on question is, the RFP for this was originally competed in 2007. What's the typical time frame between RFP competition?
Well, I can tell you, I know that in 1991, City Council selected Brown and Wood. Every municipality or local government's experience is different. So in 1991, I believe they selected Brown and Wood, and we retained them until 2006. Then in 2007, so that was about 15 years. Then in 2007, we did the RFQ. And we're really not doing an RFP, it's a RFQ. And the difference
Request for
being,
quote.
yes, the emphasis is on qualifications and price is secondary, as opposed to an RFP where you would just open the bid and you'd make a selection based on cost solely, which you'd do like for equipment and vehicles and things.
Okay. The reason I ask is the market has changed pretty dramatically since 2007. I didn't know if that's something we would look at.
That would certainly be something that if council had an interest in doing, if you provided us that guidance, we could do. I would ask that you would consider for this pending transaction that PWC has, they have a particular interest to continue moving to facilitate the sewer extensions and other projects that we have underway that are ongoing. And part of what they hope to do is actually get reimbursed for $5 million they've already spent. And so because of that timeline, we would at least ask that you make a selection for this bond financing, and then if you would like us to do an RFQ, we can certainly do that in the future if that's what the desire is. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Mr. McDougall.
Already answered my question, which was, actually two questions. One about the certification. In other words, this is a specialty that's done by this particular law firm, and most of the firms in this area really do not specialize in that area.
I'm not aware of a local firm that specializes in being, for example, like a lead or sole bond counsel. I could not swear to that, but I'm not aware of it. And then I looked to the information that I saw based on the last 2 years from the Local Government Commission. That list kind of gives you an indication of who the attorney, legal firms are that generally serve in that capacity as lead counsel.
And my second question is the period. For what time period are we retaining? Are we looking to retain this particular firm?
When the RFP or RFQ, thank you, was done, it was for an indefinite period of time because at the time there is an appreciation for an ongoing relationship. That doesn't prevent you from changing that relationship, but it wasn't for a specified time frame.
So it's not for a specified time frame, but is it for a specified, in other words, every time we get ready to do a bond, do we have to go back to this particular company, or are you saying just for this particular issue that we're dealing with PwC right now?
Well, what I am saying is that whenever you do a bond transaction, you are required, even if you said, we'd like to retain this firm for 5 years. If you do a particular bond transaction, the Local Government Commission will expect you to appoint for that particular transaction a specific firm. So while you may, let's say if you do an RFQ in the future and do for 5 years or whatever, an indefinite period of time until you're dissatisfied or would like to change, you would still have to revisit the selection of counsel whenever you do a bond issue.
So let me make sure I'm understanding you. So we're not locking this particular firm in that you're putting before us or recommending to us tonight. We're not locking them in for future work just for this particular one.
Right. And when I say this particular one, there is a short-term financing, a very short-term financing that PwC is exploring, followed up very quickly toward around the end of this fiscal year, a final bond issue. So we're asking for that body of work that we have Womble-Carlisle for that transaction. Again, beyond that, it would be at your discretion.
Thank you. Councilmember Wright.
I have a couple of questions. Following the lines of the city's strategic plan with, hiring locally and supporting that idea, based on Mr. McDougall's last question, would you have to come back to us again for us to vote on a bond counselor after this short-term period of this initial project that you're saying with PwC? Would you have to come back and we have to vote again on a bonds counsel?
You mean for a separate bond issue?
Right.
Second issue.
You would.
Okay. My problem is we're talking about the funding and trying to save money in the long term, but monies that's sent out of Fayetteville, Cumberland County, if you will, it's lost. It won't be regenerated back into our community, and whatever we have locally, that money will be invested back into community. So I think it's worth the investment to get an underwriter, or if you will, a counsel to help that. And that's my concern and my agenda. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Art.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that the staff accept the recommendation of council to authorize the retention of Womble, Carlisle, Stanbridge, and Rice as the city's bond counsel.
Second. Is there discussion on the motion?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make sure that it was specific to this particular project that needed to be complete by the end of this fiscal year. Is that correct?
It is per this recommendation.
Okay. Thank you for clarification. Council, I'll ask for your vote.
Mr. Mayor, can we please clarify the transaction, because I think is really...
Just as I pointed out, timing, there is a very short-term financing instrument that I think PwC may need to do, which would be like a short-term note or loan that would be on its very heels, followed by a bond issue. And the expected date of the bond issue is sometime May, June timeframe. That is the body of transaction that I'm speaking to and asking for your approval tonight.
So, Madam Attorney, if I reference it as item 9.06 in a time frame of second or third quarter FY14, would that be sufficient?
Did you say FY14?
FY14.
Well, it sounded like it might go into first quarter
It
FY15.
could, but it is imminent. It is a transaction that would be, we have to get on the local government commission's
Anticipated
agenda.
to be completed no later than the first quarter of FY15, but
Let's
I would think
make it
so.
no later than the first quarter FY15 because it covers a specific topic.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Okay.
Mr. Hurst, will you accept that?
Thank you. Okay, discussion on the new motion, or the revised motion. Seeing none, I'll ask for your vote. Okay, that is Councilmember Colvin voting against. The others are in the affirmative. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
I look forward to this point in accepting a motion for adjournment.
All right, 6 to 12 inches of snow. I'm coming down to see the city staff's here too.